on Nectar of Instruction, the week 2 for the module 1 of the Bhakti Shastri. And today we'll be predominantly seeing verse 2 of this book. And also we'll have a recap of the last week, whatever we saw. So last week we had an overview of the whole Nectar of Instruction. We presented what is the overview of the whole book in two ways. One is the generic and the other one is from Bhakti Vinod Thakur. And then we also went through the preface, and also we had an overview of verse 1. So let's just quickly see the overview of the whole book. We saw how this book represents or takes us through various stages of bhakti. The first section, the text 1 to 7, discusses the Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. And the text 8 discusses Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. And the text 9 to 11 discusses Bhava Bhakti and Prema Bhakti. So this is the overview that we saw for the whole book. And we also saw about the preface. So would anyone like to recollect what we saw regarding the author and his importance?
Yeah, sure, Prabhu. I can say something.
Yes, please.
The main point, I think, was that Rupa Goswami is the main Goswami, and that our path is basically guided by his teachings.
Yes, that's the first statement Srila Prabhupada writes, that the Krishna consciousness movement is conducted under the supervision of Srila Rupa Goswami. Thank you. And anybody else would like to add to it or speak on the purpose of Sri Upadeshamrit? Yes, please unmute. Feel free to unmute yourself and go, because in the share screen it's quite difficult for me to see.
Prabhuji, for Upadeshamrit, the purpose of the Upadeshamrit is to for our dormant Krishna consciousness, we have to learn what is Krishna consciousness and then probably increase our devotional service.
Specifically from the preface, like I understand the generic idea that you're giving. Is there anything specifically the preface mention about the purpose of Shri Upadeshamrit?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Oh, sorry.
Understand literature given by the Goswamis and Science of God.
Sorry. If you were still speaking, you go ahead. I apologize.
I'm sorry. I think I should do a better job in organize. Like,
I don't want to speak over anybody, so I
screen better on my side. Yes, now I can see all of you. You can raise your hands if you want to go, so that way it'll. Yeah, Stacy.
Okay. So in the preface, one of the things that really stood out to me is really my first duty. The first duty of anything is to control my mind and senses. And that will help me. That's the only thing that will help me get rid of the passion and ignorance. And so I must promote myself to the form of goodness, to sattva guna. If I really want actually to, I think, move forward, I really need to first control my mind and senses.
Yes, perfect. So the first purpose of Upadeshamrit is to make us Goswamis, which is to control our mind and senses, which is like coming to the mode of goodness. So from there, where Srila Rupa Goswami wants us to go, or wants to take us to, from the level of Goswami, where does he want us to go next? Yes, Paresh Prabhu.
To be a pure devotee of Lord Krishna.
Yes, to be first become a Goswami and then become a pure devotee of Krishna. So that is the purpose of Upadeshamrit, and that's what Srila Rupa Goswami is writing the book in that way. If you see, the first 7 verses are like mostly focused on sadhana, how do we control our senses and how do we advance through the initial stages of bhakti. But eventually he is not stopping there. It is not just anartha nivritti. There is Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would say, it's not just anartha nivritti that we should be focused on, it is artha pravritti, that we gain what is the real thing. It's not just we get rid of what we don't want, we also gain what we need to have. So that is actually attraction to Krishna and love of Krishna. So that comes in the verse 8, 9, 10, and 11. So he has both this combination, what we should give up and what we should actually ultimately gain. So that is why that is the purpose of Shri Upadeshamrit. And finally, would anyone like to say something about the attitude of a devotee? What should be his attitude when he approaches this subject matter? Or to be very specific, since we are speaking about sense control, what is the attitude of a devotee towards sense control? Yes, Mother Radhika?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Like attitude of a devotee, so he accept what is favorable thing to spiritual life and what is not favorable things, reject the non-favorable things to Krishna consciousness. And like one should be surrender to fully surrender, like mind, words, body, like fully surrender to lotus feet of Krishna and become a servant of our Guru and Krishna and association, like devotees, like be as a service mood, always be in service mood. That is my understanding.
Thank you. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur exactly writes this, that how a yogi or a jnani might want to control their senses in order to gain control of the senses for the sake of having a control so that they can advance in their path. But when a devotee tries to control his senses, he is not just trying to do it by his own strength, or that is not the goal of the whole practice. Rather, he is depending on the mercy of Krishna, and he takes to the processes of bhakti to control the senses. So his mood is one of surrender. And what is that? The limbs of surrender. The two of the limbs of the surrender is, I accept what is favorable and I reject what is unfavorable to bhakti. Because it is not favorable for my devotion to Krishna, I don't want this. There is no other logic for him. Maybe it is tasty, maybe it is healthy, all these things may be there. This is not favorable for devotion to Krishna, to come to mode of goodness, so I don't want it. So that is his logic and that is his attitude. So this is all we saw about the preface, and we also saw the overview of verse 1 last week. So if anyone would like to add some thoughts on the first topic that we spoke about the real atonement. What is atonement and what is real atonement? Yes, Mother Shameshwari.
Oh, I actually had a question because I really liked how you described that Madhyam Adhikari is the position that we want to attain through these instructions, because then we're more knowledgeable for preaching and advancing the movement and other people's understanding of Krishna consciousness. So when one attains the Madhyam Adhikari stage, do they become pure? Are they considered a pure devotee in that stage?
There are various understandings of who is a pure devotee. When we generally think pure devotee is someone who has achieved prema, perfection. So there is pure devotee based on perfection, and there is pure devotee based on aspiration. All the devotees who start in this practice of Krishna Bhakti under the shelter of Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Prabhupada, and basically the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, when they start actually, if their faith is coming from a right source, and if their real desire is only to serve Krishna and according to the definition of Srila Rupa Goswami, Anna Abhilashita Shunyam Jnana Karmadi Anavritam, if they have that aspiration, then they are also pure devotees based on their aspiration. They may not have achieved perfection, but still they can be pure devotees even while practicing Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti. A Kanishta also can be a pure devotee. Madhyama also can be a pure devotee. Of course, an Uttama is a pure devotee. An Uttama is a pure devotee by his perfection, but a Kanishta is pure in terms of his aspiration. He may be unable to control his senses, but when he goes before Krishna, he is not praying, give me sense gratification. He folds his hands and prays, Krishna, I am not able to control my senses. please forgive me, please give me more strength so that I can become pure. By that qualification, he is pure. That's what Krishna says in 9.34, that api chet suduracharo bhajate mam ananyabhak sadur eva mantavya samyak vyavasito hisa. He says, even if that devotee is suduracharo, durachar means one who commits sins, but here Krishna says suduracharo, even if he commits the most abominable sin, still if he is like really focused, I'm not going anywhere to anyone for anything, it's only Krishna, come what may. If he's sticking to Krishna in that kind of an ananya sense, then even if he has faults, that will go away in time. He is considered a pure because his faith is in the right place. So the Madhyama surely can be considered on one level a pure devotee, and in the course of practicing, anything that he has, that his heart has, that can go away by the practice of bhajan. And also these stages are all like general guidelines, but still every person will go through a unique journey based on their own conditionings from the past and their own desires and then abilities to accept and follow things. So every one of us, even though we all will go through a broad outline, we all will go through faith, sadhu sangha, bhajana kriya, all that, but each one of us will go through it in its our own flavor, because it's a unique journey that Krishna designs for us based on our own inclination towards him. It's a relationship, so it's going to be quite unique. Still, these are like the broad guidelines.
Thank you so much. That's really helpful.
So would anyone like to add, what is real atonement?
Hi, Krishna Prabhu. I'll give you that one.
Yes.
Real atonement means to come to real knowledge, where the sinful activity cannot counteract the pious activity. Like the example you gave us, you cannot chant Hare Krishna and then perform sinful activities.
Perfect. Thank you. Real atonement means coming to real knowledge. And that one of the processes of that real knowledge is actually coming to Krishna consciousness. So thank you for sharing that. So we also saw the 6 urges that was mentioned in that verse. Vacho vegam, manasaha krodha vegam, jihva vegam, udara upastha vegam, etan vegan yo vishaheta diraha, sarvam apimam prithivim sasishyat. Would anyone like to go just recite the verse? Try. Yes, Agape.
Are you wanting it in Sanskrit or in English?
First in Sanskrit, then in English.
All right. Vacho vegam, manasa krodha vegam, jihva vegam, udara pashta vegam, etan vegam, yovisha heta diraha sarvamapi mam prithivim sashishyat. A sober person who can...
It sounded like a rap.
Yeah, I turn them into songs to make it easier. And you can even add like motions to really help you remember what they all are.
It's a good tip for everyone. You want to share the translation? Then I can take Rohan Gupta.
Yes, a sober person who can control the urge to speak, the mind's demands, the actions of anger, and the urges of the tongue, belly, and genitals is qualified to make disciples all over the world.
Thank you. That's good. Thank you. Rohanji?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Vacho vegam manasah krodha vegam, jihva vegam udarupastha vegam, etan vegan yo vishayet dhiraha, sarvam apimam prithvim sashishyat. One who can tolerate the urge to speak, the mind's demands, the actions of anger, and the urges of the tongue, belly, and genitals, is qualified to make disciples all over the world.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we discussed these 6 urges, which is stated by this verse. And then we also saw how each of those urges are controlled. If you just really see, the verse does not state any solution. The translation just says, these are the 6 urges. one needs to control in order to be sober and like actually advance in bhakti in such a way that he can even like become a guru of the whole world. So the verse just states these are the 6 urges and they need to be controlled. But Srila Prabhupada, the merciful personality that he is, he goes ahead and explains, okay, how do you actually control those senses, each of those urges? It's not just, okay, here's a problem that you have to solve, but how do you solve it? That also Srila Prabhupada adds to it, adds to the purport. He adds to the purport. But if you see the flow of the verse that I'll take up when I go to this verse 2, Srila Rupa Goswami himself has a flow of how to control that. So that also we will see.
Prabhu, may I ask a question?
Yes.
It's about the learning of the verses by heart, because I'm not as gifted. Those two recitals were beautiful, but are we expected to learn every verse?
That's a good question. I should have clarified earlier. The exam only expects 4 of the verses from this book to be memorized.
Okay.
The first 4 ones are considered important. You can memorize that. If you start now, at least some of it you will get by the time we have the exam. So
okay.
If help, you can we can have a separate session, a small session just to recite, so that like not everybody is like comfortable reciting it, so we can just help everyone recite, and just in a group we can just try to learn, repeat like that. So then it probably will be helpful. We can do it like off this session apart from the Bhakti Shastri. Maybe
that would be wonderful.
Maybe a 15-minute session on one of the days. We can do it like whoever has time can join. Then I can just lead the chanting for a few times and then we can memorize.
Okay, thank you so much. That would be wonderful.
So you can reach out on the WhatsApp group, so then we can decide a time.
Okay, thank you.
So we saw Srila Prabhupada offer 6 ways to control those urges. Would anyone like to go? How does Srila Prabhupada like want us to control the urge of the speech? Like succinctly, just the solution, yes. Prayasha Prabhu?
Yeah, urges to speak can be controlled by speaking Krishna Katha, and do not speak any other than talking about Lord.
Okay. Thank you. What about the mind? Anybody would like to go for the mind? Yes, Stacy?
To control the mind, if you fix your mind on the lotus feet of Krishna, then you will be okay.
Perfect, perfect. And about anger? Yes, Sarah, Mother Indra?
So anger is, accepting all sorts of blasphemy to yourself. But if you see a devotee or a guru getting getting called out or treated badly, you can be upset enough to stand up for them.
Anger cannot be controlled, so it can be cannot be given up completely, so it can be controlled and applied wherever it is necessary. Thank you for sharing that beautifully. And what is the next urge? It is Jihva, which is, Jihva Vegam. So anybody would like to go for Jihva, Mother Radha?
I see it as a eating only regulated prasadam. You gave us that example last week.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Eating only can be helpful. And Udara, the belly, how to control the belly.
You don't have to go again for that one, Prabhu?
Yes.
It's for illicit unrestricted. It would be for the solution would be marriage and have kids to serve Krishna.
Okay, so that is for the next. So for the belly also, it is very similar what Mother, the earlier answer was shared. It is to take prasadam, but in terms of regulating in terms of quantity. And for tongue, it is about only taking prasadam at in terms of taste, one's attachment towards taste. And what you shared is for the urges of the genitals. So perfect. Thank you all. So we also saw the Anuvritti commentary on sense control. It's somewhat similar. So just for this time's sake, I'm not going to go into discussion on Anuvritti commentary, but it's quite similar with what Prabhupada suggests. And but how Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur analyzes the whole thing, the framework is different because he gives a framework to the analysis of, okay, make all these 6 urges into 3 categories: the urges of the speech, the urges of the body, and the urges of the mind. So in that way, he kind of classifies the 6 into 3 and then tries to analyze. So that is the one difference that he gives. Of course, there are a lot of points that is additional, but we can also, like, it's good for a review, I think, whatever time we spent on verse 1. So next we will go to verse 2. So today,
real quick.
ideally, okay, is it someone wants to say something?
Yeah, I just had a question on verse 1.
Yes, please.
Just the Krodavegam, controlling the urge of anger. I was just wondering, is it encouraged to become angry when devotees are blasphemed, or is it just like an intermediate stage?
Yeah, I think somewhat we discussed last week also. It's a kind of a, the answer that Srila Prabhupada gives is like very ideal, because the examples that he gives, if you see, is all like very kind of high level examples, like Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu becoming angry at Jagai and Madai. So if when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Lord himself, and then it is Hanumanji, and then it is Arjuna. So all those circumstances are much special. So when it comes to us, we need to take guidance. So if we have to like really do something in these kind of things, it's better to take guidance of senior devotees and accordingly decide what to do in, like, if something needs to be done or not. And on a personal basis, how Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur handles the issue is he puts anger and mind together as the mind's urges. Then he says, if you have unrestricted attachment, you will have, when it is frustrated, you will have anger. So what he suggests is control your unrestricted attachments, then naturally you will not, like, you'll have less chances of becoming anger, because anger is considered as an younger brother of lust. If there is no lust, there is not going to be selfish anger. So even for us to become angry at someone because that's the right thing to do, still, are we sure, like, we don't have any personal motives involved in there? Are we just coming from a mode of passion, or are we really standing up on a devotional platform and then coming to act in a way which is just, we are expressing anger, but we are not being used by anger? So to be sure of that, then we have to have really steer clear of material desires.
Thank you. Yeah, that was perfect.
So in the verse 2 today, I was about to say that ideally today we were supposed to do verse 2 and verse 3 as per the weekly plan. But I just thought verse 2 and verse 3 are such important verses. Let's take our time and discuss these nicely. Because verse 9, 10, 11, they have very short purports, and there's not a lot. We can surely discuss on those purports also, but there is not that much of material that Srila Prabhupada has written for those verses. So I hope to cover those verses in 1 week so that we can have more time for these bigger verses. So that's why this week we will just see verse 2. Next week we will just take verse 3, and then we will club more verses for the rest of the weeks. So in verse 2, we will have an introduction to the verse 2, and also we will have an overview and discussion throughout, and also we'll review the learning objectives at the end. And in terms of introduction, what I'm going to do is, as I just mentioned before, Srila Prabhupada explains how to control all those urges right in the first verse. But the book itself is not going in that angle. The book just mentioned there are 6 urges that one needs to control. And how to do that, Srila Rupa Goswami is going to step by step build in verse 2, verse 3, like that. So that we will see how Srila Rupa Goswami's logic also flows. And that's why you will see, if you read verse 1 and verse 2, you'll see some things are repeated. Like you will see the croaking frogs are already mentioned in the first verse. And again, the same analogy is given. There is no repetition. It's Srila Prabhupada's compassion that he does not want us to be hanging, just reading something and not knowing what to do about it. Immediately, here is the solution. So that's why, like, we have it twice. But in terms of the flow of the book, not many things are repeated. So we will have that as an introduction a little bit, and then we'll see the overview of the verse too. And if you had a chance to read the verse already and go through the notes, it'll be easy for you to follow. So if you have any doubts throughout the discussion, you can always ask. So the first part, for the introduction, we can have a little discussion of why we should give up those 6 urges, which was mentioned in the verse 1. Because in the last verse, it was just, oh, give up these 6 urges. And a sober person controls them, and he can become spiritual master of the whole world. I say, come on, like I'm struggling to just practice my spiritual life. I don't want to be a spiritual master of the whole world. I don't care, like I don't want to control this. Somebody can like kind of take a easy route. No, I don't want to be a spiritual master of the whole world. I'm happy just being myself. No, it's not just that. Is not the only motive that the book is giving. Still, even if you don't want to be the spiritual master of the whole world, which you will come to a conclusion when you reach the stage of the verse 11 in this book, you just want to be a devotee of Krishna, you don't want to be the master of anyone or anything, but still one has to give up the 6 urges. There is no alternative there. Whether you want to be a spiritual master or don't want, you still have to control the 6 urges. So the question is why? So any thoughts? You can raise your hands electronically, physically, you can go. Yes, Paresh Prabhu.
Prabhuji, I would like to add from the first verse itself, and the end of the first verse, Rupa Goswami and in purport, Srila Prabhupada says that you can become Goswami if you control those 6 verses, and ultimately you are not going to become, you don't want to become anyone's leader or master or anything. You must become a Goswami in order to become a pure devotee. So in order to become a pure devotee, the 6 urges should be controlled.
Because Srila Prabhupada mentions that as the ultimate success of life in preface also. So perfect. So in order to become a pure devotee, one needs to control these 6 urges by becoming a Goswami. So that is your point. Thank you. Mother Anangasaki.
So the goal of the human form of life is to attain pure love for Krishna. In order to achieve that goal, we have to be able to focus our mind on Krishna. But if the mind is distracted by weapons of mass distraction, as Radhanath Swami often quotes, then where is the question of focusing and attain a goal? So that would be an inspiration for us to control our 6 urges.
To achieve focus of mind, which is like very important in the course of advancing in devotional service, one needs to control these urges. That's your take. Anybody else would like to add? Yeah, Hector, bro.
Yes, we should have a simple life with high thinking, with high reasoning. Mm-hmm. So that is kind of our purpose also in life.
So if we want to achieve high thinking, which is the purpose of human life, as Prabhupada quotes in the verse 2, actually, simple living and high thinking. If we want to go there, then we need to control these 6 urges. Yeah.
Yes.
Anybody else? Mother Indira and then Radha.
I'm not really sure this is right, but I was just thinking, so if we did that, right, if we control these urges, wouldn't it make our life easier in general? I mean, it would definitely make our life easier for practicing our sadhana, right? But wouldn't it make us just more peaceful?
Yes, both spiritually and just in the practical life, it's going to make our life much more easier if we control these urges. That's your take, and I find it like absolutely helpful and like meaningful. Thank you for the sharing. Radha Mataji.
To become eternal servants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one need to control these urges, because in that particular verse also, Prahlad Maharaj says at the end in Prabhupada's purport, you can either be servant of Krishna or servant of the senses. You can be both. So in that sense, yes, we need to give up the urges if we want to be a servant of Krishna. As we can take last Angelica.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. I want to add to being, inspired by Mother Indira. It's simply like even in our material world, outside of any attempts of spiritual advancement, like even in politics, it's like if politicians cannot control their senses, they are already so unlucky, right? And like it's essentially everywhere. And so I feel like it boils down to being kind of just a respectable person, even playing of ego, even if our ego, like we want to be respected and seem to be important. Even in that sense, it's like it's worth to control the senses, what to speak of spiritual advancement. So I'm just thinking about that, and I think it's just very helpful in a sense, like as a student, it's so helpful to be disciplined, right? To like be able to control the belly, control the genitals, so we can focus on studies. And wherever in the society we are, it's just very, very helpful.
Your point is like even in normal walk of life, one needs control of senses. So what to speak of spiritual life?
Yes.
Thank you for that. And here Nanda Krishna and Divya also added that how like it can avoid, like it can help us avoid the sins, because Krishna also says if Krishna is pure, if someone wants to go to Krishna, then we also need to become pure. So in that way also, yes, that's true. So let's see what is mentioned in the commentaries regarding this question, that why do we have to control or give up these 6 urges? So this is a particular commentary on NOI by Radhika Raman Goswami. So he says, sorry, Radha Raman Goswami. So here he writes that how beginners generally cannot subdue these 6 overwhelming passions because they are overwhelming. It's very difficult for beginning devotees to actually control these urges. But if they think, oh, it's so overwhelming, it's so difficult, it's such hard work, who's going to do all this hard work? It's much easier just to surrender to these urges. If we think like that, then he says, no, not conquering these urges leads to growth of tendencies which are harmful to bhakti. Because anyone can come to devotional service. The gates are open for everyone to come to devotional service. But if we want to advance in devotional service, that's a different story. Coming to devotional service, staying in devotional service, and growing in devotional service, these are all completely different aspects. So in order to come to devotional service, samoham sarvabhuteshu, the gates are open for everyone. Krishna is equal to everyone. Anyone can come to bhakti. But if we want to stay in devotional service, some or other we can kind of drag it. But if you really want to grow in bhakti, then here it is mentioned, not conquering these urges can create harmful tendencies which actually stunt our growth in bhakti. So if we want to advance in bhakti, then we need to conquer these urges. And specifically in these verse 2, Srila Rupa Goswami is mentioning what are those injurious tendencies that will crop up in our hearts, that will make our controlling these urges, not just these urges difficult, it will actually make our practice of devotional service itself difficult. So what are those tendencies which can come up in our hearts, or which can continue to remain in our hearts, which will stunt the growth of our devotional service because we don't control these 6 urges? So these are the 3 points that he mentions in his commentary. So anyone wants to add anything on top of this, or some reflections on this? Okay.
So Prabhu, you're saying that coming is the first stage, staying is like a mediocre stage, and then growing is like the actively progressing stage. Okay.
Yeah, now His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, Swami Maharaj would say that, like, if somebody is not growing in bhakti, it's like he would say that just staying static is not possible. We can just stay static. Continuously, if we try to advance, then there will be some hope. So continuous efforts are required in devotion service for sure.
I want to add to it.
Yes.
It simply reminded me of this idea, like we have this premise that we want to practice so sincerely that eventually we can become pure devotees, which is kind of like the goal of a character. And so it's like, it just reminds me of the idea of first there's a thought, and then the thought turns into action and into feeling, and the feeling turns into action, and action turns into habit, and habits form our character. And so it's just even this idea of like the urges, it's already after the mind, and it's already after the thought pattern and the feeling stage. It already is an action, but then when it's not controlled in the kind of, when it happens in the proper manner, then it already becomes a habit, and that's already a problem. I mean, it's a problem at the thought level too, but it's much more serious to reshape a habit as opposed to reshape a thought.
Okay. Thank you very much, Angelica. Almost you kind of concluded a future discussion that's going to happen by sharing this. So it's really what is the connection between the verse 1 and 2, so that we will also be seeing soon. We'll be discussing on this exact topic, like how these thoughts are becoming actions, and gradually they become habits and they create trouble. And we will see surely that also. So thank you for that addition. So I was thinking last week I did not take time to recite. So maybe we can just recite, at least a couple of us can recite this time so that we know the words, because the quiz is going to test you of the meaning of each of those words. I'm already telling you, the quiz is going to test the meaning of each of these words. So even if you don't have it by heart, but at least kind of have an idea what each of those words mean, because we have 6 main words in this particular verse. So I will recite, and then others can try, so that we all can like kind of take it in. So let me recite the verse 2. Atyaharah prayashascha prajalpo niyamagraha janasangascha laulyam cha shadbhir bhaktir vinashyati. So now if I recite the first line, you all can recite, and second line like that. After that, some of you can try the whole verse. Atyahara prayasascha
Atyahara prayasascha
prajalpo niyamagraha
Prajalpo
niyamagraha
janasangascha laulyam cha
Janasangascha laulyam
tadbhir bhaktir vinashyati.
Shadbhir
Can anyone can try reciting?
Atyahara prayascha prajalpo niyamagraha janasangascha laulyam cha sadbir bhaktir vinashyati.
Atyahara prayascha prajalpo niyamagraha janasanga chalayam cha sadbir bhakti vinashyati.
Thank you. We have Paresh Prabhu, Mother Radhika, Preeti, and then Shilpi.
Atyaharah prayasascha prajalpo niyamagraha janasangascha laulyam cha sadbir bhaktir vinashyati.
Atyaharah prayasascha prajalpo niyamagrahah janasangascha laulyam cha shadbhed bhaktir vinashyati.
Atyahara prayasascha prajalpo niyamagraha janasangascha lolyam cha sadbhir bhakti vinashyati.
Mother Radha?
Atyahara prayasascha prajalpo niyamagraha janasangascha laulyam cha sadbir bhaktir vinashyati.
Thank you.
Atyahara prayasascha prajalpo niyamagraha janasangascha laulyam cha shadbir bhakti vinashyati.
Mother Radha?
Atyahara prayasascha prajalpo niyamagraha janasangascha lolyam cha sadbhir bhakti vinasyati.
Thank you. So let's see the individual meaning of those words, and then we can go into the translation of the verse. Ati ahara. Ahara generally means food. Ati means too much. So that is why Prabhupada translates it as overeating, too much food or too much collecting, because ahara can be many things. We will see that when I have to explain the actual concept, we will see why the etymological meaning of the word, why it is either overeating or too much collecting, that we will see. The second word is prayasha. Prayas is actually endeavor, but here it is specifically in this context, it is over endeavor. It is not ati prayas, it is just prayas, but in here it is prayasha. So it is like it's an over endeavor. Jalpa, prajalpa. Jalpa means speaking. Prajalpa is kind of an idle talking. Niyama, agraha, that is the word niyama agraha. Niyama means rules. We all know in the yoga also there are many limbs. There is yama, there is niyama. So similarly here also these niyama means rules and regulations. And agraha in Sanskrit, it can be niyama and agraha. They both, when they combine together, it can be niyama agraha, because two A's have combined. But it could be three A's. It could be niyama and agraha. So a plus a also is a, and a also can combine together and make a long vowel. So either it could be niyama agraha or niyama agraha. So both have different meanings. Niyama is rules and regulations. Agraha means too much attachment to accept rules and regulations. For what reason, we will see in the explanation. And agraha is neglecting the rules. Means either too much accepting the rules or completely neglecting the rules. So either way it can go, niyamagraha. Jana sangas. Sangha means, we all know sadhu sangha, sat sangha means, sangha means association. And jana means generally, there are various places the word jana is used. If you know this famous verse in Gopi Geet, Burida jana, gopis are singing. So Burida jana means very magnanimous people. But here the jana word means common people, like general people, or association with worldly minded persons, which we can say, okay, normal consciousness or like mundane consciousness, regular people, jana sangha. Laulya is greed, or you can call it ardent longing, or you can even define it as restlessness. The other commentaries translate the word as restlessness. So we will see that when I explain greed, laulya. So these are the 6 words. If these 6, Shadbir is 6, these are the 6 which needs to be controlled. And if not, Bhaktir Vinashyati. One's devotional service can be destroyed if these 6 are not controlled. So Atyahara is overeating or too much collecting. Prayasa is over endeavoring. Prajalpa is idle talking. Niyamagraha is either accepting the rules or rejecting the rules. Janasanga is associating with worldly minded people. And Laulyam is greed or ardent longing. So these are the 6 words which are main in this verse. And the translation goes like this. Would anyone like to read for me the translation?
I can do it. One's devotional service is spoiled when he becomes too entangled in the following 6 activities. 1. Eating more than necessary or collecting more funds than required. 2. Over-endeavoring for mundane things that are very difficult to obtain. 3. Talking unnecessarily about mundane subject matters. 4. Practicing the scriptural rules and regulations only for the sake of following them and not for the sake of spiritual advancement, or rejecting the rules and regulations of the scriptures and working independently or whimsically. 5. Associating with worldly minded persons who are not interested in Krishna consciousness. And 6. Being greedy for mundane achievements.
Thank you, Ansulika. So these are the 6 things that needs to be rejected or given up in order to like grow in bhakti. Otherwise, one's bhakti gets comes into danger. So these are the 6 words we saw specifically. Atyahara means overeating or too much collecting. Prayasa is over-endeavoring. Prajalpa is idle-talking. Niyamagraha is too much attachment or neglect of rules, both done whimsically. Janasanga is association with worldly-minded persons, and Laulyam is ardent longing or greed. So, yes, Mother Sarah, you want to ask something?
Indira, I gotta get the Sarah off of there. Can you go back to the previous slide, please?
Yes. This one?
Yes. So niyamagraha, graha, too much attachment to. When you say that, it confuses me again. So, or neglect of rules and regulations. So you're attached to them simply for what?
Okay, we are going to discuss when the word actually comes. We will be each of those, but still, just because you're asking, I accept something because I think I need to do it gives me some material benefits or it gives me some other benefits. It's not just, my focus is not just spiritual advancement. Accepting and rejecting both needs to be done the way we are told by our guru. We neither accept nor reject independent of the authority. So that is the thing. And I saw another hand go up, Radhika Mataji, and then Agape. Yeah.
Yes, Prabhu. Yeah, I have a question, but the Janasanga on that word, I can ask, I think so.
When the topic comes, we can discuss.
Yeah.
Yes. Agape?
I don't have a question, but in the chat, there's a question by Nanda Krishna and Divya.
Oh, okay. I have a question. Since many of us are associating with worldly mind. Okay, we are going to discuss the details of when the word comes. Now we're just seeing the translation. So let me set up, we can go through each word separately. I'm going to answer this, Mother Divya, soon. So the next book is like, it's a small discussion. So what if these 6 faults are not rectified? We already saw what happens if those 6 urges are not given up. Again, it's a similar question. What if these 6 faults are not rectified? Anyone wants to add? Already the translation explained to us, but still just to hear from in your own words. Yes, Radhika Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Like first word Atyahara, we take Atyahara, so means like we eat too much, then we can sleep too much. There is no service and there is no chanting, like proper chanting, and like sleepy mind and like lazy. Our body will be lazy. Then our spiritual growth will be decrease. And prayasa, like over we like that's time we are going for money. I am collecting too much money. Like I am work too hard. Then our body will be tired and there is no time to spiritual service, devotional service also. Like that, like prajalpa means like we can talk too much for the nonsense things. There is a waste of time. That is also going like the things like that. So I have that.
So in essence, you're saying the precious human energy that could be utilized in advancing in devotional service gets wasted in these pursuits when they are over engaged. When we do beyond necessity engage in these, then it just saps the valuable energy that we have to advance in devotional service. Right?
Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you. So I have Paresh Prabhu, then Olga Mataji, and then Rohan Prabhu.
Prabhuji, I again would like to connect to the verse 1, right? What this 6 faults, if we do not rectify, you will become Godasa and you won't become Goswami. So that's what my understanding is.
Perfect. Olga?
If you can rectify these faults, you're going to strengthen the tendencies that stands in the way of developing bhakti. You're going to make it more difficult or maybe even impossible for yourself to become eventually a pure devotee.
So today or tomorrow, sometime we have to give them up. The more we delay, it's going to grow stronger. So that's the point. Like these 6 faults, if we don't control, then they will grow stronger and cause difficulty in practicing devotion service. Thank you, Olga, for that. Prabhu Rohan?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. So as the translation mentions, Prabhu, once devotional service is spoiled, when he becomes too entangled in the following 6 activities. So just wanted to mention that.
So in the words of Rupa Goswami, our devotional service gets spoiled if we don't control this. So let's see what this is what I've taken from the commentary of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He writes in his introduction, what happens if we don't control these or don't give up these 6 faults? So he says the desire to lord over material nature increases because of over accumulation and over endeavoring and accomplishing. So the desire to lord over the material nature increases, and even the ability to understand that Krishna Bhakti is supreme is lost. Because when we all take up to the devotion service, we can see that how starkly it is different from the outside world, what we were practicing, and how much benefits it can give us. But over years, we sometimes forget that where we came from and how miserable it was. That because not controlling these faults can make us or take away the ability from us to understand that how Krishna Bhakti is supreme. That can also be lost. Either it's in the words of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, either we increase our bhakti by performing these 6 for Krishna. We don't need to give up, but we engage them in Krishna's service. Okay, I endeavor for Krishna. I accumulate for Krishna. In this way, if everything is, I associate with the devotees, I speak about Krishna. So in this way, if everything is focused on Krishna, when we perform these things in relation to Krishna, then we will be fine. Otherwise, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur says we could be thrown into some field not related to Krishna and fall down from the path of bhakti. Because of our attachment to any of these activities, we can be like misdirected. We can just get into some other path or field which absorbs all our energy and completely covers our mind from practicing bhakti. So these are the words of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So why we should either give up or control these faults. And I just wanted to just like discuss here the correlation between these two. What do you see when you see these 6 urges on one side and the 6 faults? What could be their connection, and what could be the connection of or the thought process of Srila Rupa Goswami, that he first says give up these 6 and then he says then give up these 6 also? Whatever is your thoughts, just feel free to share.
I thought both are literally same.
Both are literally same. Okay. In some kind of explanation you would like to give to that?
Like speech, we can go speech. Like here also prajalpa, not useless talk. Like go this topic, so we can talk Krishna Kada and all about Krishna. So both are like same.
Yeah,
like
and one
means like overeating.
Same.
Yeah.
True. Shilpi?
Yes, Prabhu. So I feel that in the first verse, there were 6 urges which are more subtle. You cannot see these urges, but they manifest in the second verse. So these atyahara, prayasascha, prajalpanyamagraha, these are the manifestations of the 6 urges which is discussed in the first text.
Thank you. That's very insightful what you're adding. It's very appropriate also. Thank you, Mother Shilpi. It's very right. These are urges and they are not seen so clearly, but when they manifest in these activities, they are very visible. So we will see that in the next slide. I'll have terms for that, but thank you. You just straight came to the point that I wanted to make. Still others can also add. Parish Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhuji, to add to Silpi Mataji's, right? I would think as an analogy of the senses and the actions. Mm-hmm. So the left side, all 6 urges are kind of senses for touch, smell, and the 6 faults are action, how you perform it through those senses.
So your take is like these are the different senses, but when they actually put those urges in action.
Right, the manifestation in the actions. That becomes the fault.
Angelika, thank you, Parish Prabhu.
Yeah, what I see, because I tried to like relate them almost like one by one, in a sense of like, you know, trying to see how genitals relate to faults and then how the belly relates to faults, and it's like not all of them align perfectly, but what I kind of understood is that the faults are kind of coming from ignorant mindset of feeling oneself being a proprietor. That like it's really satisfying one's senses, very separate from Krishna, and these things definitely stem from this urges. So yeah, I was just kind of thinking about that, how like over endeavoring or useless speech and accepting or neglecting rules, like it's all coming from us feeling like we are kind of islands and we can be self-made men and women and you know, third gender people who are kind of just trying their hardest to help themselves, believing that we actually can help ourselves.
You're saying these urges, when there is a strong doership, can manifest in these in 6 faults. Like there is a kind of a correlation that happens because of one's strong doership and controllership in this world.
Yes.
Thank you. Audharya Gauranga Prabhu and then Mother Stacy.
Yeah, so this is probably related to the Anuvritti, same as relating to the categories of body, mind, and words. Let's summarize same thing for the 6 urges. These can be broken into those 3 categories.
True. So you're seeing like how similarly, like how Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur broke down the 6 urges into 3 categories. Similarly, these 6 faults also fall under those 3 categories. Yes, true. Thank you, bro, for the observation. And Stacy, the last we will take, and then go ahead.
The way that I'm looking at them is, for example, speech is something that you do, but it's how you're, like, whether I'm speaking about a devotee, about Krishna, or a story in the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, or am I talking to somebody about mundane gossip and how someone's hair looks funny. So one is an activity and one is just something we do. Like the mind is here. Okay, what is the mind then doing? So is it over endeavoring or is it thinking of Krishna? So it's a fit, like my arm, or is my arm moving? So I think it's like a thing, and then what are we doing with? So these are unfavorable things to be doing with our speech, mind, anger, tongue, belly, genitals. These 6 faults.
As like tools to be used and how we put them to use. What is these are the tools that we have been given by Krishna, but how do we engage them?
That's it.
Thank you. Perfectly. So I liked all these, and I can take Mother Rupa, Sri Rupa. Okay, you're on mute.
Sorry. I appreciate how you said tools, because I like in the verse when it says one's devotional service is spoiled when he becomes too entangled in the following activities. So not that the activities are negatives, but it's just a matter of how we use them.
Thank you. That's too much entangle. Too much is like can be causing an entanglement. Yes, true. So thank you all for your additions on this topic. And here, as I think Angelica also pointed out earlier, and then Mother Shilpi also pointed out earlier, that how there is some correlations and how you are all sharing different aspects like tools, or that like Audharya Gauranga Prabhu was saying, how they all fall under these 3 categories like that, or these are all actually to become Goswami, or we will become a Godas. So all these points are valid. So to just kind of summarize in my own way, I just put this into conditional urges and constitutional choices, because as you all saw in that, these 6 urges, they manifest sometimes actually. Say, for example, I don't become angry. I'm not like angry always, like, or I'm not lusty always. I'm not like And these are kind of urges because they sometimes suddenly come. They kind of overpower. They can just be there always, like kind of like a background music, but it can become the main thing suddenly. Like a spikes. But when Rupa Goswami says, okay, these are the 6 urges you need to control, but how do we control is like, okay, then the question is, okay, how can I control these? These are so difficult to control. He says, okay, you can just catch these urges because they come and go. Very difficult. But the manifestation, the cause of these urges to be very strong is a lifestyle that we choose. How we live generally can decide how we can react to those urges when they actually come. When the spikes come, how are we going to actually react depends on the lifestyle in general that we lead. So he's saying if you want to control these occasional urges, you need to regulate your regular lifestyle, like how you live on a day-to-day basis, on a every moment basis, your general the goal of your life, the kind of the direction of your life. So if we change that, then these urges can be easily overcome. They will come, they will eventually come when we, as long as we have this material body, but we will have the strength to say no to that. So that is this concept of conditional urges and constitutional choices. So if I choose a lifestyle on a daily basis to actually act in a proper way, then I know when the urges come, okay, this is an urge and I can have some control. So our daily lifestyle and attitude choices define our ability to deal with occasional urges like these 6 mentioned in the verse 1. And also verse 2 is indirectly hinting at a favorable lifestyle. Okay, atyahara will spoil your devotion. So that means like don't accumulate too much. Means rather he is saying have a simple living. Like just take what you need, like that. So it's indirectly hinting at a favorable lifestyle. In the next verse, we will look at Srila Rupa Goswami's advice of a direct hint on a favorable lifestyle. This is an indirect hint. The next verse is a direct hint. And by this, we can gain strength in our Krishna consciousness. And this concept of triggers and choices, like our regular lifestyle, the choice that we make, can help us avoid certain triggers like lust, anger, greed, and all these things. And even if they eventually come, we will be in a much better place to react to those triggers. So that is this correlation between these 2 verses. So anyone has any reflection or comments on this?
I guess I'm just trying to better understand the use of the word constitutional. Mm-hmm. Like constitutional choices being like overall, like the foundation by which you make your choices.
Yes. Constitutional in the sense and your personal lifestyle, like it's all pervading in your life on a daily basis, how you live. That's what like is like kind of considered as constitutional. It is your, how we say, it's your constitutional position, means it's your real nature. If that becomes your constitutional choice, if it becomes your daily lifestyle, and these urges may come and go, and you will have the ability to react to them according to the lifestyle we live. Say for example, if I always collect too much, so then that means I have too many desires. Then when I cannot collect them, then I'll become angry. And because I'm like already having too much desires, then my ability to control my anger is going to be less in that way. Does it answer your question? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Could I chime in on that?
Yeah.
I find the use of the word constitutional interesting here, because constitution can also be interpreted as being your own disposition, your personality. So it is as if though if you are to follow these regulations, they're going to eventually become ingrained within you to such an extent that they're going to become an aspect of your own constitution. So basically you will come to embody these things in your own existence.
True. So when you embody them, even when the urges come, like Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, it's like as long as we are in this world, desires are going to flow like a river flows into ocean. It's going to be like so many things will come into our minds. But as you say, if we embody these choices in our daily life, then we will be in a better place to react to the choices, urges when they come suddenly. Does it sound okay? Okay. So going to the next. It's actually now we are starting the verse 2, Srila Prabhupada's commentary actually. So we will go through the book as much as possible. We'll try to cover the links. I already provided some notes that I had. So if you had a chance to already look at, you will know most of that what I'm going to discuss. Otherwise, you can also refer to it after the class. So I'm trying to cover the whole purport, but I will not go line by line, but I'll give you kind of an overview and the connections between the topics and paragraphs. So if anybody has a book in hand or a window open of the actual purport of Srila Prabhupada, you can use that to refer to when I'm discussing so that you can follow easily where I'm going. So verse 2 purport, the first Srila Prabhupada, like logically speaking, there are 6 urges. So Srila Prabhupada must be taking the first urge to discuss the first, which is Atyahara, and then it is Prayas. So if you see, Srila Prabhupada writes quite almost he takes like 2.5 pages to hint the first time, like the word Atyahara on the topic. He almost takes like 2.5 pages. But if you follow carefully from the beginning, he's just building up to go and like kind of handle that topic, like come to the point of Atyahara, how it happens and why it happens. So he writes a whole discussion of why do we even get to that place of Atyahara, what is the reason. So he gives a whole introduction for that. So the whole first 2 pages, like which is like almost five paragraphs to 6, first 5 paragraphs of Srila Prabhupada's purport is actually an introduction to what leads us to Atyahara and Prayas, what makes us do like or behave like that. So Srila Prabhupada said, in general, if you just analyze the whole thing, it is like in the spiritual realm, we have service, selfless service attitude, which is continuously engaged and constantly engaged in the devotional service of Radha and Krishna. That is what is the love in the spiritual world. But when it reflects in the material realm, then that service reflects as working for selfish interest, working for amassing more and more things for my own pleasure. So this is the kind of the hint that we get by reading the introduction. So the next slide means I just want any of you to just spot things. If you had already read the purport, if you can spot some of these terms and then say in what context Srila Prabhupada is saying those or using those terms. If you had read the purport, you can attempt in what context Srila Prabhupada is saying what. If you notice, above this line is like the attitude and the situation of a spiritual world, and below the line there are things which are said about the material realm or the material consciousness. So you can pick any of those one and then give a context in what context Srila Prabhupada is speaking that. Yes, Agape.
Okay, so the external energy, we're the marginal energy, and there's the internal energy, which are Antaranga, Tatashta Shakti, and Bahiranga Shakti. And a Mahatma is one that is controlled or under the shelter of the internal energy. And a Duratma, and Mahatma can also mean like broad-minded soul. And a Duratma is like a cripple-minded soul who is under the control or influence of the external energy or the Bahiranga Shakti.
So in here, Srila Prabhupada is mentioning about that there are 3 energies of Krishna, internal, external, and marginal. When if someone establishes themselves or stays under the internal energy, they are called as Mahatma. If someone stays under the external energy, he is considered Duratma. But if you see the whole context, why is even Srila Prabhupada mentioning these 3 energies? If you read the purport after the 5th, around the 4th line, Srila Prabhupada speaks about these 3 Shaktis. That Supreme Personality of Godhead has 3 primary energies. So where is the connection? Why is he saying that? If you see the previous line says, when one is under the control of the Lord's 3rd energy, then one is obliged to work. So essentially Prabhupada elaborates, okay, 3rd energy says, then what is the 1st energy? What is the 2nd energy? What are those 3 energies? And that's why he gives that explanation of those 3 energies and who stays where under what energy. When we come to under the 3rd energy, if we become a Duratma, then we are obliged to work. It's not a choice. You are obliged to work in this world. That's the context in which Srila Prabhupada is saying that. Prabhu Rohan. Thank you, Agape.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada mentions that when the jiva is under the control of the internal energy, their only engagement is the satisfaction of Krishna.
Yes. That's a beautiful point. That is like one of the main points of the whole section of the purport. Okay, these are three energies. And when the soul is under the spiritual realm, under internal energy, what is their natural activity? So Srila Prabhupada writes there exactly. When they are under the control of the internal potency, they display their natural constitutional activity, namely constant engagement in devotional service. That's the natural activity. The soul is continuously engaged in the service of Krishna. That's a natural thing for the soul to do. However, in this world, one is obliged to work. It just the reflection of that constant engagement, devotional service in this world is being obliged to work specifically for the satisfaction of one's own senses. Thank you so much, for Rohan Prabhu. That's logically the next point in the purport, actually. Thank you for sharing that. Paresh Prabhu?
To extend what Rohan Prabhu said, right? And what you said, Prabhuji. In this world, we are all obliged to work, and either you can do the satisfaction for your own senses or you can do it for satisfaction of Krishna. And it depends on where exactly, if you are under the control of internal energy or God's external energy. So either you can become Mahatma by working towards the satisfaction of Krishna. Although you're obliged to work, you can choose whether you can choose to work for satisfaction of Krishna or for satisfaction of senses. And in case if you go for the external energy, under the control of external energy, then you probably will be experiencing those threefold of miseries that Adi Devik, Adi Bhautik, and Adhyatmik that Prabhupada discussed in that purport. So you always, as a part towards the parts towards the devotional service, you have to decide where exactly you will be going to by controlling this or by not falling onto those six what I would say, those six faults that we discuss in this verse.
Thank you. You covered 2 pages of the purport for me in your summary. So it's exactly after Rohan Prabhu said what he said, like constant engagement in devotional service. So then Srila Prabhupada says, who does that? It is a Mahatma, because he stays under the internal energy. He works for satisfaction of Krishna. What if not? Then if not, one is a Duratma. He works for the satisfaction of the senses. And if you choose the second path of satisfying your own senses, that you are going to be within the material world, under the material energy, and you'll be subjected of these threefold miseries. Then Srila Prabhupada explains what are those threefold miseries: Adi Atmika, Adi Daivika, and Adi Bhautika. And then he also mentions that one will be going around in this cycle of repetition of birth, death, old age, and disease. And then, so this is the whole introduction. This is how Srila Prabhupada builds. If you're under the external energy, you'll be obliged to work. If you're under the internal energy, you will be working for satisfaction of the senses. So then the natural question is, since I'm obliged to work, that means I need to work. So how do I do that in a way which is favorable for Krishna consciousness? Because I can't just escape work. So let's see that after we hear from Mother Radhika.
So Prabhu, here in the selfless service also internal energy Mahatma, and the selfish work in the category also internal energy Mahatma. So both is this internal energy is the both sides.
Perfect. I kept a catch there, and you are the only one who caught it. I'm glad you caught it. The reason I kept is, you can be a Mahatma either in the material world or in the spiritual world if we take to this attitude of satisfying Krishna. So even while in this world, you and me can become a Mahatma if we choose to take shelter of internal energy. That's why I kept that extra here, because it's not just only those who are in the spiritual world can only be Mahatmas. We can choose to become Mahatmas right in this world, in this life, any moment. Does that answer your question?
Yes, Prabhu. Like any examples you can give for the like material, like Mahatma means like? Like for any examples like that?
In Prabhupada.
So is that like that is for selfless service, right? In selfish work in the internal energy, Mahatma is also.
See, in this material world, taking shelter of internal energy means working for Krishna.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I understand.
No taking shelter of internal energy possibility when we work for the satisfaction of the senses. So my understanding of keeping the internal energy and Mahatma under the material realm is, even in this world, if we choose to become servants of Krishna, we are no more under the influence of the external energy, even though we are living in this world. It is the concept called jeevan mukta. I hope it's clear now.
Is Jeevan Mukta
Yes,
and
yes.
Mahatma interchangeable?
Yeah, because each of those words have a certain context. In one sense, they are interchangeable, but if they both have a certain focus, when you say Jeevan Mukta, that means like there is a very clear understanding of that this person is like Iha yasya harer dase karmana manasagira nikilasu api avastasu Jeevan Mukta sauchate. Srila Rupa Goswami says, who is a Jeevan Mukta? Iha yasya harer dase. In this world, while living, if a person dedicates his mind, words, and activities all for the pleasure of Krishna, then he is a Jeevan Mukta. And he is a Mahatma. There is not much difference. It's same.
So he acts like a Mahatma.
Yes, he is a Mahatma actually. And when a person is really Mahatma, then fully engaged, like fully dedicated everything, mind, words, and body, then he can become a Jeevan Mukta. Like Mahatma in making, Mahatma in perfection. Both are possible. Mahatma in making and Mahatma in perfection, both are Mahatmas, but Mahatma in perfection is a Jeevan Mukta. Am I making sense?
Wait, that last part confused me.
Say, if a devotee begins practicing, he can be considered as a Mahatma because he is trying to come under the control of the internal energy. He's trying to take shelter of Radharani. So he also is a Mahatma, but he is not yet perfected. But when he perfects, even while living in this world, he is already liberated. He is a Jeevan Mukta.
Okay. So Jeevan Mukta is like the culmination, or like that's like a
higher stage, you can say.
Yeah.
There is no clear delineation or anything like that. But I'm just saying they are not exact synonyms. At the same time, they can be also.
So how did you format this slide to understand this concept? Because I think it was Mother Radhika, you were saying she had picked up on something, but I couldn't tell which part.
Oh, she picked internal energy and Mahatma being on both sections. If you see on the top, there is internal energy and Mahatma.
Okay. So I don't think I understood that the slide was divided in half like that. So anything above the line is selfless service.
Okay.
Anything below the line is selfish work.
But I just did not want to just it's not complete when you say in the material realm I cannot become a Mahatma. It's possible even in the material realm. That's why I kept those. I hope I didn't confuse much. So in this one slide, I have tried to cover the first 2 pages of the purport. So let's hear from Mother Shilpi what she has to say. Then we can go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I just had a question here on the second page of this purport, which I was struggling to understand. I'm a little underqualified here to understand Prabhupada's words, but I sometimes feel that they come out a little stronger. So I was struggling a little bit. That he says that sometimes we are working on the satisfaction of our own senses, but even if we are not doing that, we are working for the satisfaction of other senses through nationalism, humanitarianism, or altruism. So in the Journey Within by Radhanath Maharaj, he gives example of Sindhu Tai, who has been doing this altruistic work. So it was hard for me to understand that how can that be just for the satisfaction of senses of others. And there are many other altruists who are working towards making this world a better place. Maybe they are not connected to Krishna consciousness, but they're definitely working, at least to bring people to a platform where they can further and advance in their spiritual journey or just being in this world. So could you please explain that a little bit? Like why Prabhupada is mentioning this as satisfaction of other senses?
Yeah, that's an intelligent question. Thank you very much for that. So to be like very concise on the topic, because it's a huge topic, to be very concise, when a person actually does some service to others, say for example, it's not sinful for us to help others. Even after we become devotees, it's not that we should never help anyone. You can only chant Hare Krishna, you can only give mantras to others, no other help you can do. That's not as the idea. What we are saying is, if you take that as an alternative to Krishna conscious, you say, I help poor, why should I be Krishna conscious? I actually fight for the nation, why should I be Krishna conscious? I feed the poor, or I provide shelter to the poor, why should I be Krishna conscious? So these activities, when they are made as alternatives to Krishna consciousness, that's what we are saying, that's not right. But Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Yagya Dana Tapa Karma na tyajam api, like you can never actually give up these activities of Yagya Dana and Tapa. Whoever it can be, even if you are like a Manishina, even if you are a very advanced soul, still Yagya, which is sacrifice, Dana, which is charity, and Tapasya, austerity, this should not be given up by anyone. So as devotees, it's not that we should not perform Yagya Dana Tapa, we should not perform sacrifice, austerities, or charity. It's not a problem if we do, but if we should know how to do it right. And it is not an alternative for our practice of Krishna consciousness personally. That's the main goal. So when Srila Prabhupada says that, if you see, he is just saying, if they just do it without an understanding of there is a Supreme Lord, and these are the souls of the having connection to Krishna also, so I need to be merciful to them, I need to be compassionate to them, so I want to help them. That is never said no. But if the same altruist or socialist or communist, if they think there is no God, and I'm the doer and I'm the supplier, and I want to help these people, I want to make this world a better place, and all these attitude if they have, that's what is condemned.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Prabhuji. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Mother Shrirupa?
Would you say then that people that do it without the mindset or the mindset of that for Krishna, is it that it's for satisfaction of their ego then? Is that why it's not considered of spiritual value?
True. You really went into the root of that problem, because we consider myself, like if I do it without Krishna conscious, I'm doing it because I think I'm the supplier, I'm the maintainer, I'm the controller. In a sense, see, I'm so big, I'm trying to help others, like that. There is going to be certain kind of false ego in there, because the person is not able to be established in his real ego of being a servant of Krishna. He will surely have some amount of false ego. Yes. Okay, so
Prabhu,
yes.
can I speak?
I can see who wants to speak. You can go ahead.
Okay. Yes, I agree that there is some sort of false ego in there, but also as I understand, if you do charity and you don't offer that, or you don't do things in order to satisfy Krishna, you generate positive karma, and that also is, you want to avoid that reaction also, because it keeps you on the cycle of birth and death and birth and death. So you also want to do everything in order to satisfy Krishna, because that's the way you kill karma, the only way.
Yes, so you're basically speaking about the concept of like karma, akarma, and vikarma. There may be sinful activities which are abominable, but these activities, giving things to others and all, and a charity, these are not bad karmas, but still they can keep us in the cycle. So they are not akarma, still they are karma. And you say Krishna consciousness is the akarma, which does not give any reaction.
Okay.
Yes.
So it is correct, right?
Yeah, it is correct. I was just giving the technical terms to your thought. So
Yes.
when you do sinful activity, it is called vikarma. But when you do activities which are not sinful, but it can create good or bad both reactions, so they are called karma. But Krishna conscious, as you said, does not create any either bad
Yeah.
or good karma. It is called akarma.
Okay.
Thank you. It's
Thank you.
right. Then Anangasaki Mataji.
So Prabhu, with regards to Shilpi's question, you said that as long as they acknowledge God and not consider themselves the doer, it's okay. So does that mean this acknowledgement of God should be only Krishna, or it could be God of their faith, as long as they're acknowledging the God whom they believe in?
It means God is actually one.
Mm-hmm.
Can be different, but if they have that consciousness of actually accepting the Supreme Lord and doing it on His behalf, that is the same. There can be flavors to it, but surely they can be advanced if they have a God consciousness.
Okay.
There are gradations to it though, but still it's surely godly to be having that consciousness and doing on behalf of God.
Okay.
Balaji Prabhu?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Prabhu, I just have some question about in the selfish work, how exactly can there be a Mahatma, Prabhu? Maybe you explained it, I missed it.
Okay. So when I meant here in under the selfish work, it's the general characteristics of the material world. But if someone chooses, okay, I don't want to be selfish anymore, he has an opportunity to take shelter of Krishna and become a Mahatma even while living in this material world. It's not that one becomes a Mahatma only when he achieves the spiritual world or goes to the spiritual world. Does that answer your question, Prabhu?
Sure, Prabhu. Prabhu, are there any examples apart from Prabhupada, Prabhu? Or
Each and every one of us, literally, we try to actually take shelter of Krishna, and what we are chanting every day is like, oh Mother Radharani, please engage me in the service of Krishna. So we are trying to go under the shelter of Krishna, the internal energy. So the more one is pure in their chanting and the more one is engaging in devotion service, all these innumerable devotees, they are all Mahatmas actually.
sure, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu.
Small and big, but we are all Mahatmas in our own right. The more and more we take shelter of internal energy. Does it answer your question, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu. Yeah, thank you, Prabhu.
So it is almost 3:30. It's a time for a break. So let's meet after a 10 minutes break, and we will have, like, literally we are just going to start the verse, but pretty much we have done the background work for the whole verse, so it's going to be much easier to cover the rest of the topics. So let's meet again after 10 minutes, have a short break, and we'll meet again at 3:41. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Gurcharan Prabhu, can I ask you a question while everybody's coming back?
Yes, yes.
So you know how in the Srimad Bhagavatam, like there's that verse about how in Kali Yuga everybody's like misguided, lazy. You know what I'm talking about? There's that verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam where it describes how in Kali Yuga everybody's like quarrelsome, misguided, lazy, and there's like a bunch of other ones.
Yeah.
Can you like how can we understand like the 6 faults that are mentioned here versus those? Like, is there like some relationship, or is it kind of like, are they getting at the same thing, or is it kind of like, or is it talking about different things?
In that verse, they're just giving like what is the symptoms of or the general characteristics of people in the age of Kali. Like Agape has pasted that, like how men are always have short lives and also quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all always disturbed. So
yeah,
if with all these qualities, how is their lifestyle is what the verse that we are seeing. They're going to over endeavor for material things. They're going to over accumulate material things. They're going to engage in gossip. So that's the lifestyle of those people who with those symptoms of like having a misguided or unlucky or being disturbed, quarrelsome. With those qualities, this is going to be their lifestyle.
Okay, so it's like specifically,
it's all related.
it's
It's
already,
just
yes.
2 points actually of the same kind of people.
Right. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Agape, for posting that.
So if everybody is back, yeah, we gave almost 3:44. So let's start. I'll share the screen. So if work is anyway like unavoidable, that's what we saw in this material world. Everyone is obliged to work. So if everybody is obliged to work, then how is it that I'm going to get out of this? So in the material world, one has to anyway work for the maintenance of the body. So, but how can one perform such work in a way that is favorable for our bhakti or devotional service? So this is where Srila Prabhupada starts or connects the topic with Atyahara. So for whatever he spoke, through this question, he connecting it to the topic Atyahara. He says one should not collect more than necessary. So from here, Srila Prabhupada says, if this natural principle is followed, there will be no difficulty in maintaining the body. So he's hinting at this. If you see the purport of Srila Prabhupada in the book, the very first line, what he writes in the purport, can someone read it out?
Sorry, Hare Krishna Prabhu, what?
The very first line of the purport.
Playing, living, and high thinking.
Yeah, human life is meant for plain living and high thinking. And if you see the conclusion of that whole section, again, Srila Prabhupada is mentioning the same thing. He just took these 2 pages to explain that concept, why it is important to follow plain thinking and like plain living and high thinking. So at the end, again, he is mentioning one should not collect more than necessary for his actual basic needs. If this natural principle of plain living and high thinking is followed, then there will be no difficulty in maintaining the body. So now he's going to speak about the topic of Atyahara in detail. So the problem is collecting more than necessary, and the solution is plain living and high thinking, which is collecting as much as necessary for his actual basic needs. So Srila Prabhupada gives this example of a bag of rice kept in public. He says that the birds will come, eat and go, but a human being will tend to take it away and keep it for himself. But if you see this, you can ask, oh, is it not intelligent actually because anyway tomorrow I have to eat, and the rice is anyway available. So I save it for the next day. So what's the problem in it? Because it's intelligent, right? Probably that's the difference between animals and birds and human beings. That the birds does not understand, hey, there's so much rice available. If I save it for tomorrow, I don't need to go again for searching in search of it. But a human being has that intelligence. So what's the problem? Why Prabhupada is making a big deal out of it? What do you think?
Because it's so much our tendency to take much more than we need, where just we easily go towards greed.
So there is nothing wrong in storing for the future, but it can easily go towards the extent of greed, like over storing things. Is that your point?
Yes, but also the point that if we're, well, it's not my point, it's Prabhupada's point, but if we store too much and we become greedy, then we're taking from the quota of others.
Others. Yes, true. So it is like Ishavasya principle. We are like encroaching upon others' quota. Yes, thank you. I have Mother Indira, Paresh Prabhu, and then Mother Shilpi.
I was thinking in terms of these storms that come or this COVID that showed up out of nowhere, how people run to the store to get all the food and like start hoarding food for months and months. And there is some, you know, intelligence to that, I would say, I guess, maybe, but it's also just, I feel like people tend to hoard. Like, do you really need to run out when a storm is coming to the grocery store? Do you not have enough already in your cupboard that you could figure out what to do for 2 days? You know, it's like that idea that, oh, I need to take care of, like, I think it's like fear comes in, right? The fear that we're the doer and we have to take care of ourselves because Krishna won't provide, kind of thing. So that's what I was thinking of when we were saying collecting too much.
Yeah, we may have to, like, in our practical life, save somewhat for taking care of ourselves for the future, because saving for future is not atyahar. Because Srila Rupa Goswami, when he actually gives up his government duty and he retires to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's service, he has savings and he gives it, he distributes that savings. That means they had saved a boat full of gold, not like nothing less, as a boat full of gold. And that is just the saved wealth. Just imagine how much wealth if they had a boat full of gold coins like that. So saving in itself is not said, is never like considered bad. It's just that how it is being utilized and how much to save and what is the amount of effort that goes into that saving, which might take away one's time from Krishna consciousness. That's the problem. And as you rightly said, if there is a pandemic, there is an emergency, hoarding may be like as an okay thing, but there is a limit to it. And it cannot be the general lifestyle or anything. Emergencies are something. Does that reflection okay, Mother Indira?
Right. I mean, exactly. Like there are emergency situations, but is every storm an emergency situation? I guess is what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
Like COVID, I guess everybody was really not sure what was happening. So it felt like the end of the world, maybe. but for just a winter storm that we get constantly and we know they're going to be 2 days of like being inside, is that emergency situation kind of thing?
Yeah, it depends on individual, depending on their health and all those other things. Still, the general principle of like having an attitude of like dependence on Krishna is also required, along with practical actions that we need to take. Both are required. Thank you. Prabhu Paresh?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I understand in a way what Prabhupada is trying to explain us is, when you say collect as much as necessary, is what is the consciousness behind it? When you try to collect only for your basic needs or maybe for future, as you said, right? If I go back to your previous slide where you say for selflessness or for the selfish motive behind it, where you want to try to collect out of greed, what is your consciousness? You want to try to collect out of greed that this is all mine. I want to keep it for me. I don't want to give it. I don't want to share it for someone else, right? Because example of that rice, bag of rice is when birds comes, they just take it what they needs. And when the man or the human comes in, he just takes it and says, I'll use it the whole rice later. So I think it's probably a consciousness that will tell you that it's probably your selfish motive behind it, the greed.
Yes, perfect. So why Srila Prabhupada is mentioning this in this angle of there is something wrong in human beings doing that is, as you're rightly saying, greed. I don't care what happens to others, whether they get or not. It's all that matters is like, do I have it? And
Correct.
it's within my need and without an emergency.
Right. Even in this COVID situation, we have seen there were fightings in the stores when it initially started, right? To keep and store so many things for your own sake and not keeping for others.
But it also is a reflection of our general attitude. So both are there. Thank you. Mother Shilpi?
Yeah, Hare Krishna Prabhu. So a couple of points to what Mother Indra was saying. So I actually experienced that myself when COVID just started. And there was this a meme shared that those people who have bought 25 bottles of hand sanitizer, you need to know that they're the others need to sanitize their hands too for you to not get COVID. So I totally agree with her, like what happened during those times. But I do understand people were panicking, and that led to hoarding. And so with regards to collecting more than necessary, I feel it's also about the more the merrier mentality. The more the less. Our desires, our greed is like forest fire. The more we have, the more we want. So it cannot be satiated um, just with there's an example in there's an analogy that a fire is satiated by a constant supply of fuel. So our desires have to be constantly supplied, and they will never be satiated because they will just keep burning and burning. So that is what I was thinking of when why do we collect more than necessary.
Sure. Like as you're saying, in terms of times of emergency, it could be very different. But yes, every means that sense of like I need to hold for like out of greed, or as you're saying, like the supply of the desire, like however much you supply, it's never going to reduce. So that is why the problem is in terms of atyahar is collecting more than necessary. But what is necessary for each individual might differ. But surely every one of us have some kind of a sense, if we are true to ourselves and true to Krishna in our hearts, we know there is a limit. When the collection of something, when it is too much, everybody has a certain idea and guidance will surely come to help. So yes, so the solution is simple living and high thinking, and collecting as much as necessary for one's basic needs can avoid us or help us reduce this problem of atyahar personally, at least. And the next is what Prabhupada is writing in the purport. So Prabhupada says collecting more than necessary of material possessions. He says one should not collect more than necessary. And if this principle is followed, there will be no difficulty. So here faith comes into picture. I need to have faith. If I work properly and collect as much as necessary, then Krishna will actually protect me if things are beyond my control. But I actually endeavor properly. And if not, if I just end up unnecessarily collecting too much, then the next problem of prayas comes into picture, over endeavoring comes into picture. So if people are advised not to collect too many goods, so then they think they are being advised to return to a primitive way of life. Srila Prabhupada writes, generally people do not like that concept of plain living and high thinking, and he says that is their unfortunate position because their goal of life is different. They're not understanding why we need to be following this aspect of plain living and high thinking, because it saves our time for the practice of Krishna consciousness. At the same time, it's not that those who can actually earn a lot, who have the ability and the karma and the capacity and a life situation which actually enables them in this life to actually earn a lot or be very popular, be very beautiful, or be in so many ways, they may have the abilities to actually gather naturally without much endeavor. Also, it can come to us. So it's not that they are all Atyaharis or anything like that. We don't need to judge others. So how they will utilize what they are given in their lives by Krishna is there between them and Krishna actually. So there is no one simple principle. Okay, if you have one house, that's necessary. Like two, if you have two, then you are an Atyahari. Like there is no clear like definitions or anything like that. Each individual situation and life is very different. So what we need to take is, okay, am I doing to so much that my time for Krishna consciousness is completely taken? My consciousness is like fully absorbed in so many things that I don't have any space for Krishna. So that we need to see. And I also recommend that most of us, if possible, we can have our videos on, because I see as the time increases, the number of videos on is like gradually reducing. So I don't generally in a class, it's not a problem, but because it's a 3-hour long, it's an academic course, it's better for your own like accountability if you have the video on. So thank you.
I have a question for you, and I always try to bring it up and listen to many answers regarding this, because there's this verse which is actually like one of my favorite verses in Bhagavatam, but also it's very controversial, especially in this topic, and it's Canto 2, chapter 2, verse 4, and so the translation is, when there are ample earthly flats to lie on, what is the necessity of cots and beds? When one can use his own arms, what is the necessity of a pillow? When one can use the palms of his hands, what is the necessity of varieties of utensils? When there is ample covering or the skins of trees, what is the necessity of clothing? And of course, like I understand it's like more related to really like highly situated Goswamis and all those amazing saintly persons like in Vrindavan who, you know, like every single night sleep under a different tree and stuff like that. But it's like, how do we define that boundary between simplifying and actually like releasing the over endeavoring mindset and actually like not fulfilling one's dharma, especially I'm thinking like about education, like higher education, or yeah, like being a grihasta and actually like being a successful businessman or stuff like that.
I think Agape already posted something which was very relevant. Okay, there was
thank you.
Chat was active. Sorry, I'm not able to keep up with the chat when I have the shared screen. Okay, you had asked the question there. So he's also like, as Srila Prabhupada is mentioning in that purport also, if say for example, if we can be in that state that Shukadeva Goswami is saying, and if we can be completely absorbed in Krishna, then it's a natural position. If just being like that causes us so much anxiety that we are out of anxiety, we cannot actually focus on Krishna, then that's not natural for us. So the principle is, we situate ourselves in a certain situation in our life, or we situate our life in a certain way so that we can peacefully focus our mind on Krishna. That means if you need to have a roof above your head, please do that. You don't need to live under a tree. If you need to have, like, you do all that necessary things. So ashram means, all the ashrams is, the idea of ashram is wherever you can actually be there and safely and happily practice bhakti. If somebody can be in the renounced ashram and if they can be peaceful and practice bhakti, that's their ashram. But if the idea is where you can serve and advance in Krishna consciousness, where you can serve well Krishna and where you can absorb yourself better in Krishna. For that, whatever extra adjustments you need, you make that. That's not a problem. But you need to know, okay, the whole idea of making all these arrangements is so that I can focus my attention on Krishna. So if making these arrangements takes up so much of my energy that I can't focus on Krishna at all, then that's where we need to understand, okay, how do I balance this situation? But if you're a student and if you're going to college, you may have a certain phase in life, phase in the year where you're so busy you can only do bare minimum sadhana. That's okay. That's something that you do in this world when you're living. At the same time, when you have all the time, what do you do? So that's where Krishna actually tests. Does it answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Hi, Krishna. So this is about Atyahara. So then the next principle is so here also in other paragraphs, apart from the first initial paragraph, there is some mention of Atyahara. It is like, due to excessive desire for material prosperity, even people accept religion. Religion is supposed to take us beyond the material realm and make us attached to this supreme Lord. But still the same religion can be used to become attached to material things. And too much endeavor to gather just not just money or things, knowledge, books, and all these are manifestations of the same tendency that is also mentioned by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And he also says bhukti kamis, mukti kamis, and siddhi kamis, if their desires to achieve more enjoyment or liberation or yogic powers, those trying to accumulate all that also can be considered under Atyahar. The next is Prajal. I'm sorry, there's something wrong here. Yeah, it is supposed to be Prayas. Sorry, the title is messed up. So it is Prayas and it is over endeavor. So the excessive endeavor to satisfy one's artificial material needs is the problem, and endeavoring for Krishna's service is the solution. So that's what Srila Prabhupada mentions here. So we all like to endeavor. So if we can endeavor to inquire about the absolute truth, then our artificial needs will naturally reduce and our tendency to endeavor for something will also be satisfied. So we are not asked to not endeavor for anything, rather we try to endeavor for the right thing so that we save our energy for Krishna consciousness and our eagerness to and our initiate, like the need for taking initiatives and endeavoring for things and striving for things, that is also satisfied. So that is done by endeavoring in an intelligent way, both for material and spiritual needs. So the prajalpa is the useless or godless or unnecessary talk. Yes, I think somebody has raised their hands. Yes, Mother Indira.
I'm sorry. Can you go back to this slide? Because I think this was my question before.
This one?
Yeah. So consult spiritual authority to come to real knowledge. Endeavor to inquire about absolute truth. Is that what you were talking about previously when you were discussing?
I think it was Niyamagraha that you were asking about earlier, because you were asking about having like
accepting rules is a favorable thing, then why not do that? In that context, then I said that, but here the context is different. Sorry, Agape, for cutting. I didn't mean to. So
I'm glad you both remembered what I was talking about, because I didn't really remember.
So you're amazing, because I was just trying to rush and then kind of like go, but you actually brought me back. So I have more to share actually in this slide. So if you see in the section why we are even discussing this prayas, Prabhupada says, okay, we need to accept plain living and high thinking, and human life is meant for God realization. That means the special ability of human life is that intelligence that we have. So Srila Prabhupada says is use this higher intelligence for actually inquiring about the right thing. So then Srila Prabhupada actually mentions the one of the important verses. Once professor in Philadelphia, Srila Prabhupada had a discussion with a scholar, and then the scholar asked Srila Prabhupada, what is the essence of your teachings? Prabhupada said, Prema Pumarto Mahan, achieving love of God is the essence of my teachings. And he said, okay, out of all that you have written, if somebody can only preserve a small section, what would you actually suggest them to preserve? Then he said this particular verse, Dharmasya hi apavargasya na arto arthaya upakalpate na artasya dharmaya kantasya kamo labhaya hi smrita. He said this verse should be preserved. This gives the essence of my teachings. And Srila Prabhupada, it's considered one of the landmark verses by Srila Prabhupada, that he mentioned that as the essence of his teachings, because all occupational engagements are certainly meant for ultimate liberation. Ultimate liberation is Krishna consciousness. So he's saying the highest intelligence of human beings should be utilized to actually understand what is real dharma. And what is the purpose of dharma? To actually advance in spiritual life. And then Srila Prabhupada says, people take up this dharma and still endeavor for material things. Rather, they actually invent a certain religion for the sake of material advancement. He says, oh my God, like you can mess up anything. Like the purpose of dharma is to advance in spiritual life, but the conditions of take up that dharma and they actually give a different direction to it, different end to it. So that's why Srila Prabhupada is saying, unfortunately, people accept religion for material prosperity. Why? Because of the tendency of atyahar. I want to accumulate some or other, even if it's in the name of religion or it's in the name of the religion. Either I'm religious or irreligious, I want to accumulate more. So that's why he's saying it's a very strong tendency that one needs to control. And the idea Prabhupada gives is, okay, if you really want to control this tendency, whether you're religious or irreligious, in the garb of either way, you actually endeavor for the real thing, which is the absolute truth. You inquire into the absolute truth. Then by that endeavor, you can overcome the tendency, one can overcome the tendency to be an atyahari, to over accumulate and over endeavor all these things for material things. That is the connection in the whole thing actually. Because people can misuse that human intelligence to produce factories, slaughterhouses, and all these other things. If you don't utilize your intelligence for spiritual advancement, what happens with all that intelligence? The urge is there. So then I make everything comfortable for living. Then I create new and comforts. Like you see all the how things are happening. We had simple mobile phones. Some of us in the call would have lived without phones, and the mobile phones came, and then they were just like very primitive, and then now it's like it's just making advancement. It's not that the advancement is bad, but also we know how much distractions that it can create. So now the whole generation actually cannot live without certain apps. And those apps did not exist before a few years, and we all lived and we survived, and we probably are much more mentally healthy and happy. So it's just the artificial needs that are created because of the human intelligence, which is misused. So that's what Srila Prabhupada is saying. Endeavor to inquire about absolute truth, then actually you can you can avoid this intelligence being misused. So I hope, actually I covered the whole section of Prajalpa also. Sorry, Prayas. So Mother Indra, that satisfies you? Okay. So the next topic is Prayas. I'm sorry, it's Prajalpa. That means useless talk or unnecessary talk or godless talk. So then Srila Prabhupada gives the example. Prabhupada, just imagine if Prabhupada was here today, if he had to rewrite the purport, he has to mention one thing, which is internet. Everything else is included in that. It's all that he needs to write is one thing, just internet. Everything is there. The magazines are there, the newspapers are there, the crosswords are there, the television is there, the novels are there. Everything is there online. So all this thing Prabhupada says, when it is not related to Krishna consciousness, when it's not necessary even for maintaining a material life, when it is done for the sake of the urge, so then it becomes Prajalpa. It's not just what I speak, it also what I browse, what I watch, what I write, what I read, everything is kind of included, because they are all going to come out as what I speak. Like if I don't speak, but if I go and pass a bad comment on someone's Facebook or YouTube, it's my thoughts actually, it's my speaking actually. So just bashing people on the comment section is also is like offending people in one sense. So that is Prajalpa. If it is done in an unnecessary way, in a godless way, then it's not very helpful. So Srila Prabhupada has dealt with this topic in the Vacha Vegam also, if you see in the verse 1 also. Why is it that again repeated? In one sense, it is not repeated because Srila Rupa Goswami did not write a purport to the first thing. He just mentioned these are 6 urges. Now he is telling how those urges manifest in activities in your daily life, in our in our general living, how does those urges manifest? So there is no repetition, but it's just an elaboration or a connection. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur write a lot on this topic. Let's see. How did I do this? I have just messed up all the titles. This is Jana Sangha. Okay, I'm sorry. This title is again Prajalpa. It's actually Jana Sangha. That means associating with persons not interested in Krishna consciousness. Yeah, I just forgot to rename the titles. So Prabhupada says, strictly avoid the association of worldly minded people, stay in the association of devotees. And he gives an example, even in the material circles, people actually congregate, people actually get together, people come together, make associations, make clubs for the sake of, because they all have common interest. Like it's like all kinds of clubs and all kinds of associations are there. So people can gather based on their inclinations. So Prabhupada is saying, if we all want to practice Krishna consciousness, then let's gather. He's saying the ISKCON itself is made for that purpose, so that all of them who wants to actually practice bhakti can associate with each other and advance in that cause. So he's saying, try to live in the association of devotees. I think there were questions on this topic by Mother Divya earlier in the chat. And I see Mother Indra and Radhika, both of your hands up. Maybe it's from the previous for Mother Indra. Okay, Radhika Mataji, you have some question?
Yes, Prabhu. Like association with the non-devotees,
Avoid it.
So avoid what, Prabhu?
No, please go ahead.
So in this regard, in my family, so we are the only one Krishna conscious. Now we are starting. So the people in relatives and my parents all are non-Krishna conscious. So if we talk them, like we can't talk every time, we can't talk the Krishna Katha and all. So we can talk their problems and their village issues like that. So what we can hear, or we can discuss, or we can skip, or what should we do then? Every time we can't avoid, and every time we can't do like that, right? So in this regard, so what is the question? What is the solution?
I think this question is very similar to what was asked by Mother Divya and Nanda Gopal also. Thank you for the question. It's a very practical question. So there are various aspects to understanding and implementing it in life. The first thing is how we live personally. Because there is a circle of control, there is a circle of influence. So there is a circle of where we can actually control things, is like, what do I do with my time? How do I actually use my time? What do I speak when I have all the control in an environment? In my own small home, where I have all the opportunities to be, even if it's not home, if it's just your room, because inside the home also sometimes some are Krishna conscious, some are favorable, some are not favorable, all these different situations we all live in. So in our own personal space, when we have all the time for ourselves and can exercise our control, what do? It defines our consciousness and gives us maturity to deal with other people. And while dealing with other people, we don't deal with them strictly just for I am a Krishna devotee, I am going to only speak about Krishna. We don't impose the strictness on them, rather we impose the strictness on ourselves, and we deal with them, we deal with compassion. We understand where they are, we meet them where they are, and then see if there is a way we can connect them to Krishna by our behavior and just by being a nice person, a nice friend. And then they can see that niceness is coming from Krishna consciousness, so they can appreciate Krishna consciousness. If they are at least not willing to take up, at least they'll appreciate Krishna consciousness if they appreciate you as a person. So sometimes that may involve even speaking non-devotional things, but surely we cannot speak anti-devotional things. So there are differences. There are some non-devotional things, but there are anti-devotional things. So when we interact, if sometimes you have to enter into the realm of non-devotional, but you carefully tiptoe back, but never we are supposed to engage in anti-devotional talks for the sake of, because some relationship will fall through however hard you try. Or not all relationships can be kept up when you come to Krishna consciousness, because the domain of interest is so stark. Some relationships will fall through that when you make that transition. But still there are certain relationships, if yeah, Indians, like families, like a very strong connection, you will continue to keep that. But see if there is a common ground that you can strike, where you can come back safely, and if they are interested, they can come with you. So it's just like a practical everyday thing that you can practice in your own life. When you are just by yourself, what do you do? Then Krishna will give you the intelligence when you have to speak to other people and deal with their questions and association. And also association affects many things, like association can affect our desires, association can affect our intelligence, association can affect our faith. So those associations which actually just really affect our faith itself is very serious. You need to be really, really careful when you have to deal with that. Like there will be some people, just by speaking to them, you will just not like become weak. You will just feel like bhakti is not a thing to practice. So if we don't have the strength, and if we know they can even shake our faith, then we keep our distance. And the next serious thing is like even our intelligence gets corrupted. Like we just cannot see why this is bad for us. And the other thing is small desires. Like you look at an ad, you become attracted to buy a new dress. So that is just, that ad is actually, by that association, what you're getting is a desire. That's okay. But if it becomes very regular, then it can affect our intelligence. That intelligence can affect our faith. So it can just take us. But like watching an ad, buying a thing is okay. But if we are just mindlessly engaging in shopping, it may be just you're losing money now, but it is making you more and more vulnerable to actually get affected by your intelligence and then faith also gradually. So there are various levels, either like non-devotional, anti-devotional, and also things affecting your desires, things affecting your intelligence, things affecting your faith. Those things which affect your faith, a complete no. You stay away from that. And intelligence, be very cautious. Desires, watch out. If it is getting again something you're coming in touch with, you speak with a person, and as soon as you speak with a person, you get some desires like which are not very Krishna consciousness. You feel like doing that, you just, yeah, I also need to check out that, I also need to go here. So just by speaking the person, you need to be nice to them, make sure you don't get affected by their desires. I'm not sure if I fully answered your question, but these are my thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's good, Prabhu. Thank you, sir.
Mother Shilpi?
Yeah, Prabhu. So I had a question that you mentioned that some people who can affect your faith, you should, that's a no. That association is a no. But isn't that something to introspect? That is something wrong with our own faith, that someone could actually, come that close to our faith or to our devotion. So could you elaborate on that point a little bit?
If I understand your question, I just want to be clear. You're saying like, is it not helpful for us to be introspective of our own faith when we come with those persons? Are you asking in that angle?
Yeah, I mean, intentionally or unintentionally, we deal with such kind of people on a daily basis who are atheistic, for example. But if I am believing what they are saying, isn't my faith not that firm in what I'm practicing? Or isn't that something I should introspect in myself rather than staying away from those people?
Yes. So as you're saying rightly, it's sometimes we don't have the luxury of not associating with such kinds of people in the general walk of life. However, our faith is not just based on our own intelligence. Our faith is a gift by associating with, it's coming from the parampara. It's coming from by the mercy of the devotees actually. Because our faith that we possess today is a gift given to us. That gift that we have received by the association of devotees. So because we actually have faith in those devotees, we value what they have given to us. Say, for example, I give you a gift and then I come and see after near you have just, it's in trash. So it's like how you treat the gift that I give you is how you have value for me. So similarly, this gift that we have, the faith that we have, has been given to us. Like Brahmanda Brahmite Kona Bhagyavan Jiva, Guru Krishna Prasade Pai. By the mercy of Guru and Krishna, that seed has been given to us. So we need to protect that. So when we are trying to stay away from people, it's not that we demonize them or we don't speak to them. So internally you have a barrier and you value. So the deeper your connection is with your Guru and Krishna and the Parampara and Srila Prabhupada, and how you practice and value those teachings, you actually value that. So you don't want others to hurt it, where you don't want others to take it away or others to harm it. So in that sense, we actually protect that faith, because it is, and we also invest our intelligence and understand and resolve. Yes, Krishna consciousness is the best thing. Maybe this person does not have faith, but I understand that Krishna consciousness is the best thing. So we need to come to that level of faith gradually, where it becomes a common sense to us that to see the world without Krishna consciousness only is everything is in a bad shape. So it's not a brainwashed thing, but the more our faith becomes stronger, we will be able to look at the world and really diagnose. That's why studying Srila Prabhupada makes it, like, even for me, when I started studying Srila Prabhupada books, the most attractive thing was the diagnosis was amazing. I never looked at the world like that. The diagnosis he gave for the material problems or the situation of the world was like such a different outlook. And that faith now has transferred from Srila Prabhupada into us. So then we want to protect that. So even if people challenge our faith, if we are in a good place spiritually, it will only strengthen our faith. And Uttama Adhikari is someone who can even speak to those people, scripturally speaking. If a person's scriptural knowledge and personal practice is strong, how he does that may be different with each individual. By his behavior, sometimes he can endear that person. I have seen sometimes devotees, very nice devotees, their close friends may be like non-devotees, like not even like an atheist also could be a friend, but he will love this devotee actually. He may not like his practice of Krishna consciousness, but he would just say this person is amazing. So there are various ways of dealing with people. So if we can endear them, and if they can get some kind of security, if we have the strength to do, then we engage with them. But if our faith is so weak, then then we actually better keep our distance if possible.
Okay, thank you so much, Prabhu.
Mother Shri Rupa?
Isn't it so also that we shouldn't engage somebody in a discourse or conversation where it's going to incite them to be offensive? Because then that's, that will also harm our faith.
It's perfect. I'll save your question, because that's what Bhaktivinoda Thakur's explanation on this topic will give us a clarity on. So it's, what I did was, in this presentation, I segregated Prabhupada's commentary on this purport, and then I put what Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur says on each of those topics. Exactly what Mother Shri Rupa is asking, like how to deal with, not even letting other people offend. So how to speak, so that Bhaktivinoda Thakur is going to answer for us. So is it okay if I take up that along with Bhaktivinoda Thakur's commentary? Okay, thank you. So with this is actually Jana Sangha association. So we avoid non-devotee association and stay in the association of devotees. And the next topic is Niyamagraha. And it is, I earlier explained while explaining the translation word to word, that this particular word Niyamagraha can be divided into two meanings. One is Niyama Agraha and the Niyama Agraha. The word Agraha can be Agraha or Agraha based on how we divide the Sanskrit word. So when we say Niyama Agraha, that means accepting. Agraha means, Graha means taking up. Agraha means super enthusiastic in accepting it. Grahan is like taking something. So either here this person is too eager to take, but what is he taking? He's taking the scriptural rules and regulations, but for the sake of some kind of material benefit. He thinks I'll follow this, then I'll have some material benefit. So he's super strict with those rules, because he thinks by doing this I'll get something materially. So Srila Prabhupada writes, devotees should be very eager to accept rules for the sake of spiritual advancement. So we should accept, but we should accept for the sake of spiritual advancement. And the other category is niyama agraha, means just neglecting the scriptural rules and regulations, which are actually meant for spiritual advancement, spiritual development. Being very careless with the rules which are given to our by the Guru Parampara, being very neglectful, even though they are very important for spiritual advancement. So then Srila Prabhupada mentions the devotee should not be neglectful towards the rules which will impede their devotional service. So these are the two categories how we can deal with the rules wrongly. These are two faults in a way to deal with the rules and regulations which are scriptural. Any questions on this? Okay. Yes, Anagasaki Mataji.
Could you give examples? I'm not very clear about, especially following something strictly without considering spiritual advancement. Can you just give an example?
And also the other meanings for this word is also Bhaktivinoda Thakur says accepting certain rules, and even though they are advanced, they still hold on to the rules which apply for the previous stage. Say for example, a person has crossed the Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti and gone to a next level, but he still is following certain rules of the previous stage that he was in very strictly, that he is unable to progress further. So the example could be like, say for example, in a higher stage of Krishna consciousness, certain rules like may not actually hold what holds for Vaidhi Sadhana Bhaktas, like means it's very like Vamsidas Babaji Maharaj is like a Mahabhagavat, but they may not actually, like for us it's like bathing 3 times or bathing once is like a rule, but these advanced roles sometimes may not even bathe on a particular day. They may be absorbed in their thing, but there you cannot just tell them, oh, this rule, because their absorption is on another level. So this is a kind of a very high kind of a level example. And what Srila Prabhupada is hinting is people utilizing these rules thinking that it will give them some material benefit, like okay, I'll have deity, it's not for devotees in general, it is people may have this kind of an attitude, I'll have deities, I'll worship, then I'll have some benefit out of it. Or if I won't, Indians also have certain kind of like, okay, if you don't follow this particular rule like 7 times, it should be shown, then it should be shown, like why they may not understand, but they'll also fear if it is not done in this way, then there's something, the gods can be angry at me, and all these kind of attitudes. We can bring that attitude within the devotional service also. We may be very perfectly counting while doing arti, but we are not understanding what is the purpose of the arti and why we are doing it, and the emotional involvement in that act. We may not be able to do that because we are just concerned about the rule, and we don't even go to the next level of, okay, what is the purpose of me doing it? So we are accepting certain rules very strictly, but we are also losing the importance of what is the purpose of this rule.
Yeah, they mentioned like Ekadashi, right?
Ekadashi, very strictly following it is not a problem. Right. But if it is done for the sake of like advancing in some, like, okay, my sins will be taken away, or I did some mistake, so I'm repenting through that, then that kind of is not so well, is not very good.
But isn't the Updesh Amrita geared to beginners? So at a beginning stage, we will follow rules strictly, right? Rather than getting more into the understanding. Like I, as a pujari, for instance, can say that when I'm offering the paraphernalia in an arti, I definitely have the count in mind also. Sure. Because that's my way of at least making sure that I'm following the rules properly. I'm still not there to, bypass the rules and have a consciousness where, it's my devotion and love Krishna will understand if I. So it's kind of a double-edged sword.
So your heart is in the right place, even in that you're thinking, this is my expression of love for Krishna. I just want to make sure, because this is the rule given. By following it, I want to please Krishna. My guru has given this rule. By following this, I'll please Krishna. So the heart is in the right place. if that particular thing is either neglected or who cares, like it's anyway, it's okay, I'm like thinking of Krishna, I don't need to keep account, that becomes a niyama agraha.
Right.
At the same time, thinking that just by doing all this, you see, I'm a best pujari. I like, if we become the center at any point of time, so then it becomes like we lose the purpose in either way, whether it is niyama agraha or niyama agraha. When we become the center instead of Krishna being the center, then that's where the problem is.
Okay, so it boils down more to the consciousness,
Yes.
right? Like anything else in Krishna consciousness, as they say. It's
Yes.
all the intent.
Yes, certain rules to be accepted and kept up and not neglected, but for the sake of spiritual advancement and for the pleasure of Krishna.
Okay.
Okay, I see a lot of hands here. Paresh Prabhu, Mother Olga, and Radha Prem Pradha Mataji. I think Radha Prem Pradha Mataji raised her hands first. Let's go with her.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. So for beginners, when they come and when we are preaching them and we are trying to get them involved, and during that time, there are certain, like as they start coming and as they start getting involved, at that point of time, we explain them according to their own individual their circumstances and come to their level. So for example, if someone is in misery, we try to explain them, and then slowly, gradually, we also introduce them and then encourage them to do Ekadashi. And behind that, we say, you will come over your miseries. And that's how, we start teaching them also. So then in a way, we are using this niyamagraha, where we are, telling those rules and apply those rules for their benefit. So and on the other, so it sounds like then contradictory, right? So how do we understand this here?
Yeah, the question is, you are saying, when we understand all these principles of niyama, agraha, agraha, and agraha, still sometimes when a new person comes, he's in a certain level of consciousness. To meet him where he is, we have to say, yeah, perform these things, it will be helpful for your life in various ways like that. We kind of feel like encouraging them in their material lives and using spiritual life for that. Krishna says, like Chaturvida Bhajante Mam, 4 kinds of people come to him. So coming is not a problem, but just trying to stay there and not willing to move ahead. That is the problem. We can come to Krishna for any reason, that's not a problem. But by that association, gradually they should move ahead. They should not get stuck. They should never be like wanting to accept like Krishna is the goal of life. Ultimately, this human body is temporary. Ultimate aim of life is to become a servant of Krishna. They should be eager to accept that conclusion and move towards that conclusion.
So Prabhuji, sometimes that process takes long time also. So during that process, niyamagraha is permissible in that sense?
The quicker the person moves, the easier and the safe he is. That's all we could say. But it's all based on independent consciousness. So you see his inability to come to that stage is what keeping him away, actually, because he's attracted to some kind of rules or some kind of other interest. So it's a problem. Maybe they will take their time to gradually come, but still, for our personal understanding, we need to understand, in my life, I should not be like that.
Okay.
Olga, Paresh Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. I wanted to share a personal experience regarding performance of puja and specifically following regulations. I was participating in the home worship course taught by Vasudeva Prabhu at the Bhakti Center. And he was the person who was teaching us how to perform puja, how to offer different articles on the altar, which order, how many times, around which part of the body, and so forth. And the main takeaway is what I wanted to share with all of you, is that instead of being so focused on the mechanical performance of the action, the main focus should be on performing the action with loving service. Because so many of us were so very narrowly mindedly focused on specifically how to follow the technical aspects of the process, that we were losing the connection that is meant to be enlivened, so to speak, as a process as a byprocess of performing the actual puja itself. So Vasudeva would say to us that it's better to do 6 times or 8 times as opposed to the proper 7, and feel that internal connection, perform that action with loving service, as opposed to do everything completely structured in accordance with the rules and not have that individual experience. So I wanted to share that just in case anyone is worried about strictly following the rules. So the main takeaway from Vasudeva's course, something that he really tried to instill in us, is that the main thing is that you focus on performing everything with loving service.
Yeah, surely pleasing Krishna and like trying to have a right mood is always important. But the question of Mother Anagasaki is, some of us, given the background that we come from, our expression of that itself is following the rule actually. For some people, their expression of like wanting to please Krishna is because the rule is given, so I have to follow it. It's a kind of a different attitude we come from. I think the balance is we need to know both are important, and we have to do our best.
That was happening to me too when I was trying to count and perform everything exactly according to how Vasudeva Prabhu explained it to us. And that's why he had to kind of bring some of us who were had the same mindset as I did back a little bit and kind of focus on that balance as opposed to just the regulations alone.
Yeah, sure, the balance needs to be there. That ultimately it's all for the pleasure of Krishna, and how much we can balance both the rule as well as just being conscious of the thing. Thank you, Olga, for that addition. Prabhu Parish.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Just wanted to add on that Niyama Agraha. I was hearing a lecture from Radha Gopinath Prabhuji, and he explained it in a way from one of the Mahabharata stories where Kunti Maharani and all 5 sons were there in the Brahmanas, and the Bakasur stories were there. And what he explained is in the scriptures, it balanced both the things. For example, for the guest there, it says Atiti Devo Bhava, and then there are duties of the Atiti itself. So you cannot just say that I will just choose the rule as Atiti Devo Bhava and have all the luxuries into the host and ask for everything as a guest. But you also have your responsibility as an Atiti, that when there is a problem on the host, you are also as a part of as a guest, you also perform your duty as a part of the family itself. So in that sense, I understand Niyama Agraha, you're just getting what you need from the scriptures and neglecting the other things. So that's what I wanted to add.
Yeah, it's a beautiful example. Thank you. I see someone else has raised hands, but you can go ahead because I don't know the name.
I think it's Mother Ananga Sakhi.
Oh, okay.
It was previously raised, yes.
Oh, okay.
No, it's not me. Yeah, maybe from the previous one. It did get removed. I'm sorry. But yeah, I have nothing to ask. Thank you.
So then we also thought of like discussing some examples of Srila Prabhupada's Leela, how he adjusted certain rules for the sake of like expanding the movement of Krishna consciousness in the West. Prabhupada is a perfect example of following rules for the pleasure of Krishna actually. So would last some any examples, any thoughts that come to your head, like yeah?
So he as how Prabhupada adjusted rules, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, adjusted rules for the sake of like keeping up the principle of expanding Krishna consciousness.
Right. So in the West, he allowed women to go on the altar as pujaris. They took initiation. They ran temples. They did a lot of things that I guess normally in India they couldn't do.
True.
Yeah, I have heard Prabhuji in so many lectures that Prabhupada has adjusted this 16 mala for us, the japa mala. Instead of 64, ideally it should be 64 mala, you should be doing your daily round. But Prabhupada adjusted for our ISKCON movement to have everyone do 16 malas.
Yes, that's a beautiful example also. Others, Mother Radhika, Shirupa, is it like already mentioned that you lowered your hands, Agape?
I've heard that Prabhupada, originally he had women and men in temples, and I think it was because he was like, when it was really small in the community, he wanted to be there with everyone. So they were all living in there together. And also in Los Angeles, he tried to keep the atmosphere of the church as Western as possible to make people feel comfortable. So like they wanted to tear out the pews and make that the temple room, but he put the deities actually in a smaller social room and wanted the pews to be kept and for people to be able to wear shoes whenever they sat in the pews to hear about Krishna and do kirtan on the organ, so that his Western movement would be more successful.
True. Yeah, I've also heard that Srila Prabhupada had the desire for and still devotees went ahead and removed all that and installed the deities in the bigger room. And yes, Mother Shirupa and then Mother Radhika Shilpi.
And then also giving sannyas at such a young age.
True. And Mother Shilpi or Radhika?
Yes, Prabhu, Hare Krishna. So like in India, we know like only Brahmanas can go to the temple and they worship the deities. But in Western countries, Prabhupada mentioned like anyone like Brahmana took Brahmana Diksha, so they can follow the deity worship and all. So they can he can adjust the rule.
I would actually consider this as like a kind of a reformation more than adjustment, because the real spiritual rule is anyone can become a Brahmana, not by birth. But in India, culturally, it has become a thing like that. So it is more of a social reformation that Srila Prabhupada did. Time and again, various acharyas did that. Madhvacharya did that. Ramanujacharya did that. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did that. Haridas Thakur was born in a Muslim family, and so many other devotees. So every now and then, the various acharyas brought back the real principle, and in the modern time, Srila Prabhupada really established again. It's a kind of a excuse me, social reformation. Like it's a social movement also, Srila Prabhupada involved in establishing these principles. So yeah, he didn't adjust a real religious principle, rather he reformed a principle which was lost by doing that. Shilpi? Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Prabhuji, please correct me if my understanding is wrong, but what I have read before from Prabhupada's Leelamrit is that he gave initiation even though the devotees were not following the 4 regulative principles to the T, like, for example, smoking. They were still in the process of giving it up, but they had not given it up totally. So, for example, please correct me here, but I have read that Shyam Sundar Prabhu, in Los Angeles, when he was carving the deities of Jagannath, Baldev, and Subhadra, he keeps the butt of the cigarette on top of one of the deities, and then Prabhupada comes and he asks him to remove it. So I mean, he was very, very compassionate towards everyone. He was not judging them because they were not able to follow, but he asked them to reduce like having cigarettes, smoking cigarettes, 1 cigarette at a time or 1 packet at a time, or so yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is what I remember from what I read.
No, what you said is right. Like Srila Prabhupada, for the first initiation that he did, for the very first initiation, he did not tell them what are the rules for the initiation. He initiated them, he gave them the names, and then he pasted a paper outside the door on the 26th 2nd Avenue that all those who got initiated today, all the new initiates, should be following these rules. And there he actually listed the 4 regulative principles. He also mentioned you should treat your guru like God, and they were like really shocked. What do you mean by that? So far you said anyone who says you're any guru who says that I'm God is like a dog, you said. And Srila Prabhupada writes there, okay, these are the 4 principles that needs to be followed by all the regular initiated new initiates, and they should consider their guru as God. And so they would clarify afterwards. Mukunda Maharaj writes in Miracles on the 2nd Avenue. And I think with respects to Shyam Sundar Prabhu, he became a devotee in the San Francisco after they were trying to move. So he was not an initiated at that point of time, but he was becoming a devotee, and he was carving Lord Jagannath, and he had the thing on top of Jagannath, and one hand he had his cigarettes, the other hand he was working. So yeah, Prabhupada must be such a Saragrahi Vaishnava that he could see the power of Krishna consciousness is so high, all these other external things which are superficial will eventually go away. so he could actually maturely deal with them and prove the efficacy of Krishna consciousness by becoming more and more Krishna conscious in his association. They could give up all that. So yes, true. Srila Prabhupada did adjust all those things, because I remember there was another Gaudiya sannyasi who very many years later he came to the West, and he saw certain things here, and he was saying only Prabhupada could do what he did. I can't do these things. I can stand these certain things. I can tolerate certain things. I can, like, it's a shock actually culturally for certain things. He said this is the greatness of Srila Prabhupada, that he could actually just not like be with them, deal with them, and not being affected by that, and also uplift them. So that's actually the sign of a really advanced Vaishnava. So Srila Prabhupada surely did that. So this is some of the examples in Srila Prabhupada's life, how he adjusted the rules for the sake of keeping the principle of expanding Krishna consciousness, because the rules are just instruments to actually implement the principle. So the principle is to remember Krishna, the rule is to chant 16 rounds. So if we just chant 16 and not remember Krishna, we are following a rule, but we forgot the principle. That's why it becomes an offense. So the rules are means to actually implement principles. So any rule that we are doing, following, it always has a principle behind, and we need to understand, like how Olga was saying about Vasudeva Prabhu's mentioning that principle of like for lovingly trying to serve Krishna. That is the principle. But the rules are also there. So trying to have a balance and understanding, ultimately the rule is for the end of achieving the principle. So that is on the topic of niyama agraha. And the last one is laulya, and we have less than 10 minutes. So it is greed or fickle-mindedness. It's a big topic in itself, because if you see read Srila Prabhupada's purport, the Anuvritti explanation that he gives, it sounds like atyahara. What is the difference between atyahara and laulya? If it's all like accumulation, it's already like mentioned in atyahara. So why is it this topic again being given and under the title laulya again? Because Upadesha Amrita is like Nectar of Instruction. It's only 11 verses. If you see, it's all condensed version, and in that there is no point in repeating the same concept twice within the same verse, not even in different verses. Atyahara and Laulya is in the same verse. If it's just collecting things, then what is the difference between Atyahara and Laulya? And if I had time, I would have had a discussion, but since we have only 10 minutes, so I will go ahead and explain the concept. In Atyahara, yes, it's over accumulation. But the word laulya has multiple meanings. It can be considered ardent longing, as Srila Prabhupada translates, or greed, or fickle-mindedness. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, they explain predominantly this word from the angle of fickle-mindedness. What it means is not being fixed in the path of bhakti. Sometimes, you hear, this yogi actually achieved this siddhi and he produced this, and you feel like, oh my God, I'm missing out that. So I just try to do a little bit of check out, okay, what is this yogi doing? What is the process he follows? Something like that. And then you hear this guy performs this sacrifices and he can achieve, or he can get these material benefits. So I can go and check out that. So various paths. So this meditation is kind of making me peaceful. So just jumping things without understanding what is the goal of life, just jumping between different processes, not just becoming fixed in the process of Krishna consciousness and its practice. And the main problem that Bhaktivinoda Thakur says is this laulya, this fickle-mindedness can cause this person commit a namaparad. Which namaparad? Because he will hear, this demigod, if you worship this demigod, this can you can achieve this. He jumps into that also to check out. So what happens is then he actually equates the process of bhakti with some demigod worship, which is a namaparad actually. Considering the names of Vishnu equal to other demigods is considered a namaparad. And the same Janasanga, what is the biggest problem that Bhaktivinoda Thakur says is, it can lead to, Prajalpa can lead to Ninda. Means if we end up speaking blasphemy in the name of Prajalpa, then that becomes an offense. So to clear again, this laulya is not just anything same like Atyahar. The tendency to be not fixed in Krishna consciousness, that is being addressed. In Atyahara, the tendency to accumulate material things was addressed. But here in laulya, the tendency to not be fixed in bhakti and just go around and do some spiritual shopping. That kind of attitude is like being called out here. And that is why people can take can just like that jump between things. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his pastimes, when Mukunda is there, he actually chastises him. When you are with the impersonalist, you speak like an impersonalist. When you come with devotees, you do kirtan. I don't like this, get out. I don't want to see your face. So because he didn't want him to just act like a different skin whenever he gets into different association, that was not appreciated. So that particular aspect is being addressed here. So that's why Srila Prabhupada writes, all attempts to acquire such material benefits, because I think, oh, sometimes I can perform yoga, sometimes I can perform, like for mukti, I want to merge in Brahman, or sometimes I can perform material sacrifices for material prosperity. Sometimes I also can practice bhakti. This kind of a mixture. I have seen some people in my life who for years come to temple, they will sometimes chant, they will give donations, but they will never just fix. They will read Prabhupada books, but still they will just not like stick to it, because in their own time, if you see, oh, I'm hearing Mahabharata. Okay, where are you hearing from? This just thing came up from YouTube, and like you don't know, means that guy is saying something, so you don't know who is he, what is his philosophy, but you make a philosophy out of that. That person said, but who is that person? Is he an authority? So this kind of spiritual shopping happens. So then your ability to progress in bhakti becomes slowed down. And to the extent it can completely take us away from bhakti also. That's what the Srila Rupa Goswami was speaking. And to complete Srila Prabhupada's purport, he gives the implications for the overall society, not just individuals, because Rupa Goswami says individually what is the problem? Our bhakti will be destroyed or compromised if we don't follow. Srila Prabhupada takes it one step ahead and says, if people follow this advice of Rupa Goswami, what effect the society can have, and what if they don't follow? So then he explains how people want to over accumulate, so capitalists over accumulate by their scheme, then the communists become irritated and they try to overpower them. So whether the wealth is with communist or capitalist, if they don't know how to use the wealth for the pleasure of Krishna, then there is no difference between capitalists and communists. It's just keeping it in the right pocket or in the left pocket. It's just with the same thief. So as long as they don't know how to utilize it for Krishna's service, then there is no real solution. So that's why Srila Prabhupada says people should scientifically, Prabhupada writes a very exact statement, let me read. When people learn the art of scientifically utilizing the Lord's property, they will no longer encroach upon another's rights. So if we really want to come to this stage of Ishavasya principle, that everything belongs to Krishna, I only take my quota. If we want to come to that, then we need to learn the art of scientifically utilizing the Lord's property. Only then we will be able to not accumulate and cause trouble to others. And what is the advantage of following these six, giving up these six faults? That all the enmity between men and women, men and animals, capitalists and communists, all kind of economic maladjustment or political maladjustment and instability, all this can be solved. So this is how Srila Prabhupada ends. He says, so please accept this Krishna conscious movement and develop this culture by giving up this six faults. So this is how Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport, advising us to follow the advice of Srila Rupa Goswami. So Mother Radhika.
Yes, Prabhu, Hare Krishna. So in the previous slide, so in this example, Prabhupada told $100 bill devotees honest and wise. Like honesty and wise means who lost the bill, so we can get it, we can find it and we can give it to them. That is honesty and wise. So in this case, I have another case we have. So my son, he got a $20 bill on the street. So we didn't find who is he and we didn't give it them. And we gave to the, we go to the temple and we gave to in the hundi box. So what is this? This is we can steal. This is stealing and giving to the Krishna. So what is this case?
see, if it was lying anywhere in the street and there was no way to find who does the $20 bill belong to, then what you did is perfect. But it's not that you put your hand in your friend's pocket, take $20 and then go and put it in. You don't make them involuntarily donate, which they are not willing to give to Krishna. That is not like very, still he will get some benefit, but it may not be very much appreciated by that person. So if in situations like when you can't really find the owner, then it's okay, you can give it to Krishna. But you're not just going to take take the wallet of your friend and then say, see, and then you put it in the hundi. No, that's like maybe not very appreciated by the person.
Yeah, okay, thank you, bro.
So here, I just wanted to complete few slides. If anyone really wants to go, you can proceed, but we still have 3 minutes, please wait. So if beyond the 3 minutes, if you want to go, you can, because I'm going to just discuss the commentaries of Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, very short. And they also write very condensed, so it's not a lot to discuss. We have seen a lot of it already. So the atyahar, over accumulating, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, yes, this is called over accumulating. But for different people, it is different. For renunciants, it's different. For householders, it is different. And it needs to be applied according to each person. What is over accumulation can change for person to person. That's what he says. Many things he says, but this is the essence. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur says for atyahar, he says one who always runs after accumulating the thoughts. There he's always planning, how can I acquire more and more? So that is the thoughts, that is actually a sign of having this tendency. And he also includes not just people accumulating physical things, objects, possessions. He includes the knowledge accumulated by jnanis, the pious credits accumulated by karma phalavadis. That means they think if I acquire pious credits in this life, in the next life, I can go to heaven and enjoy. So these are all called as atyahar. With prayas, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, of course, over endeavoring, and all endeavors unfavorable to bhakti, that can be considered as a prayas. Anything which is unfavorable to bhakti in its ultimate motive and end can be considered. Any activity opposed to devotional service and any endeavor for sense gratification, these are all potentially can be prayas. And Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, hoping for material things, one whose mind is absorbed in enjoyment is called prayasi. And he says the jnanis, disciplines and methods. In the last slide, he said the knowledge of the jnani is accumulation, over accumulation. Here he is saying the disciplines and methods he takes up to achieve that knowledge, that he calls as prayas. Similarly, I perform tapasya and vrata to get pious credits. That is also, I perform austerities and I perform vows and regulations and rules for the sake of achieving pious credits. That is also, he's saying, is under karma kanda or prayas. And for Prajalpa, there is a lot of nice discussion here with Prajalpa. Mother Sri Rupa also asked some questions related to that. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that useless talk, village talks, that is unnecessary time wasting, these all can be considered as Prajalpa. And he says the main danger of Prajalpa is...
Guruji, we cannot hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
I can hear you the whole
We
time.
cannot hear you.
I can hear you.
Okay. I think
Yes,
please
we can hear you.
connection, Paresh Prabhu. Okay, so let's go to the next slide so that will be easy for me to explain. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives 8 categories of talk. So the first category he says is useless talk. It may be non-devotional, it's just casual. The other thing is argument, getting into argumenting, like which say a political leader said something or we are getting into an argument. If it is like very relevant to life, that's okay. But if just for the sake of some political view, if we are just fighting with other devotees, so then that can be like an argument, which may not be very favorable for use of our time. Gossip, like just speaking about other people. Useless talk is like there's just no topic, it's just completely spaced out, but it's just wasting time. But these are all very focused, taking up a certain issue and debating, having a strong opinion. Gossiping is speaking about another person in their absence in a very unfavorable way. debates again, fault finding in others, because Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that fault finding is actually our own tendency reflected upon others, speaking falsehoods, like fabricating stories, and blaspheming devotees. This, he says, is a very serious thing which can become an offense. So when someone blasphemes devotees, and then there is worldly talk. So these can be the different. In Mahabharata, Bhishma Dev says these 5 categories to Yudhishthira Maharaj. He says, topics of the absolute truth. Speaking about the absolute truth is the best of the speeches. If you can speak that with someone, can you speak sweetly to them? Like, I can speak about Krishna to everyone, but can I speak sweet to them? Like, there's nothing I'm going to achieve or lose in this conversation, so let me just speak sweetly to them. And even that is not possible, then you can speak truthful. And the next category is useless speech. And then the last category is blasphemous speech, which should be given up. So these are the 5 categories that Bhishma Dev gives. Best is to speak about the absolute truth. If not, speak sweetly. If not, speak truthfully. But don't speak uselessly or blasphemously. So that is the categories that he gives. And when we say for Vacha Vegam, Srila Prabhupada says, yes, speak about Krishna, otherwise don't speak. But it's just not very practical. So Bhagavad Gita also is like, gives this and kind of an understanding. It says, okay, at the right time, the verse doesn't come to me. The verse says actually, Satyam Priyam Hitam Chayat, Vanmayam Tapa Uchyate. So it says the austerity of speech is to speak truthfully, but pleasingly. And also, if you can do that, then speak from the scriptures. If you don't know how to actually apply the scriptures properly according to the place, person, and circumstance, and speak to them nicely so that they can take it, then just don't get into that business. Just you read and be happy. You read your books, you try to apply it in your lives, then just be happy. Don't speak unnecessarily. So that is how Bhagavad Gita says that. If you can speak to another person for their benefit in a sweet way, you can explain truth. If you have the ability, please explain the truth in a sweet way. Otherwise, just read and be happy. Don't worry about explaining it to others. If you cannot be sensitive to others. So these are various perspectives on speech. So to come again, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that useless talks, argument, gossip, debates, fault finding in others, speaking falsehood, blaspheming devotees, and worldly talk. These are the different kinds of prajalpa, he says. Bhishma Dev says in Mahabharata, he's not speaking about prajalpa, he is only speaking about 5 types of speech. The best quality of the speech is absolute truth, speaking about it. The second quality, the second grade of speech is speaking sweet. The third is speaking truthful. The fourth is useless speech, which needs to be avoided. And blasphemous speech is the last category, which also should be avoided. Okay, let's go and see what Bhaktivinoda Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur said. He says, he whose tongue speaks not about Krishna and about other things is called Prajalpi. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur is like very clear, no confusion. very, very broad definition. Sorry. I'm sorry. What happened to my screen? So his talks are useless and vain, and speech of Anyabhilashis are rooted in sense gratification. He says those people who want to accumulate so many things, they will endeavor a lot, and in the course of their endeavor, they have to speak so many things to so many people. So their speech naturally becomes actually prajalpa. So with niyamagraha, it's pretty much the same that what we have seen. Accepting rules for the sake of material advancement, scriptural rules for the sake of material advancement is called niyamagraha. And not accepting those rules which are helpful for spiritual advancement, it is the same that both Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's explanations actually reflect the same things. Not accepting the rules for material advancement and accepting the rules for spiritual advancement is what is recommended. And the laulya is what we discussed earlier. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says it could be either greed or it could be actually unsteadiness of mind. He says unsteadiness in religious belief, that is spiritual belief. So instead of having a fixed faith in Krishna consciousness, a person gets attracted to various philosophies, various paths, and is always constantly changing things and jumping from here and there. He says if that person actually sometimes worships Krishna, and then thinks demigod worship is also somewhat very similar, then that can be in like a offense. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explanation of Laulya, the person with Laulya tendency is, he wanders here and there to fulfill his own selfish interest. Sometimes he takes to yogic path, sometimes he takes to karma path, sometimes he takes to bhakti path, because he has a selfish interest. Some or other I want to benefit, but he doesn't know what is that real benefit. So that's why he's called as a Laulya Para. So since we are already over time, so I'll just summarize the learning objectives without a discussion. After this discussion, you're supposed to be able to list the 6 faults and give some kind of examples and analogies for those, and some quotes that what Srila Prabhupada says about those 6 unfavorable activities. And also you should be able to explain the meaning of those terms, each terms in the verse that was given. And also if you want to apply that in your own lives, so you should be able to think of some plans, at least choose, okay, I'm not going to speak or do this like that. If you can make some plan for at least some of these aspects in your own life, which is relevant from this verse, and understanding how Srila Prabhupada adjusted certain rules for the sake of propagating the Krishna consciousness movement, and also discussing the importance of this verse for one's own devotional service. How, if I want to advance in devotional service, how important this particular verse is, that rejecting these unfavorable activities are for my life. So thinking about that. So we try to discuss as much as possible in the given time and cover the whole purport. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me either in the WhatsApp group or by mail. So thank you all very much for staying through the long session.